The First World War killed over 40 million people. 40 million. And for the soldiers who fought it, life in the trenches was a living hell. Disease, hunger, rats the size of cats eating your rations while you slept. Horrific smells you could taste in the back of your throat. Corpses rotting in the mud just yards away. And underneath all of that, the constant knowledge that you could die at any moment. Not tomorrow, not next week, right now, this second. A sniper's bullet, a random shell, a cloud of poison gas drifting on the wind. Tonight, we're going to find out what it was actually like to be a trench soldier in World War I. If stories like this help you wind down at night, hit that subscribe button. And I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is there. Drop it in the comments. It's wild seeing this bedtime community spread across the globe. Now, get comfortable, adjust that pillow, pull the covers up, because where we're going, comfort doesn't exist. You're about to spend the night in a ditch, 7 feet deep, 6 feet wide, carved into the frozen mud of Belgium in the winter of 1915, and you're going to wake up in about 3 seconds. The cold hits you first. Not a normal cold, not the kind where you pull the blankets tighter and drift back to sleep. This is a wet cold. A bone-deep, seeping cold that starts in your feet and works its way up through your legs, your spine, your chest, until your whole body feels like it's been wrapped in damp newspaper and left in a cellar. Your eyes open to darkness, not complete darkness. There's a faint grey light somewhere above you, filtering down past the sandbag walls. Dawn, maybe. Or close to it. You're not sure anymore. Time stopped meaning much about 3 days ago. You're sitting on something. Your mind takes a moment to remember what? The fire step. Right. A narrow ledge of packed mud and wooden planks built into the side of the trench wall. It's where you stand to shoot at the Germans. It's also where you sleep, apparently, because there's nowhere else. You're sitting with your back against the trench wall, your overcoat pulled over your head like a tent, your rifle across your knees. Your legs are numb from the position, your neck aches from the angle, and there's something warm and heavy resting on your boot. You look down. It's a rat. A big one. The size of a small cat, maybe larger. It's sitting on your foot like it owns the place. Its whiskers twitching, its black eyes reflecting what little light there is. It doesn't run. Why would it? It's been here longer than you have. It knows these trenches better than any soldier. It knows where the food is, where the bodies are, where the warmth is. You kick it off. It squeaks, more annoyed than frightened, and scurries away along the duckboards. Those are the wooden slats laid down in the bottom of the trench to keep you from sinking into the mud. They don't really work. The mud oozes up between them, around them, sometimes over them. It's not regular mud either. It's something else entirely. A thick, soup-like substance that seems almost alive in the way it clings to everything. Your boots, your trousers, your skin. It's got a consistency somewhere between porridge and quicksand, and it smells like a combination of wet earth, rotting vegetation, and something else you don't want to think about too hard. The smell. That's the next thing you notice. Or rather, you notice that you've stopped noticing it, which is somehow worse. When you first arrived at the front, the smell hit you like a physical blow. Now it's just background noise, part of the environment, part of you, almost. Your uniform smells like it. Your skin smells like it. Your hair, your breath. Everything reeks of damp wool, unwashed bodies, latrine pits, cooking smoke, cordite, and underneath it all, like a bass note in a terrible symphony, the sweet rotting smell of death. There are corpses in no man's land. The stretch of devastated earth between your trench and the German trench may be 250 meters away. Some of them have been there for weeks. You can see them sometimes when you dare to peek over the parapet during daylight. They lie there in the shell craters and the mud and the tangles of barbed wire, and nobody can go get them because anyone who tries gets shot by a sniper or cut down by machine gun fire. So they just lie there, decomposing, and the wind, when it blows from the wrong direction, brings their smell right into your trench. But you're used to that now. You're used to all of it, or at least that's what you tell yourself. Somewhere down the trench someone coughs, a wet hacking sound. Probably Jameson. He's been coughing like that for 3 days now. The cold and the damp have gotten into his chest and they won't come out. You've seen men die from that kind of cough, not from German bullets or shells or gas, but just from the cold and the wet and the sheer miserable conditions of this place. They call it trench fever when the lice give you something, and there's trench foot when your feet rot in your boots, and there's about 100 other ways this ditch can kill you without a single enemy soldier lifting a finger. You shift your position. Try to get some feeling back into your legs. Your feet squelch in your boots. They've been wet for so long you can't remember what dry feet feel like. The whale oil is supposed to help. They give you little tins of it, and you're supposed to rub it on your feet every day, and your mate is supposed to inspect your feet to make sure they're not turning black and rotting off. That's not a joke, by the way. Trench foot is exactly what it sounds like. You stand in cold water and mud for days or weeks at a time, and eventually your feet just start to die. They swell up, turn pale, then blue, then black, and then you're being carried back to the casualty clearing station on a stretcher, and the doctors are shaking their heads, and before you know it, you're missing toes or feet or worse. 75,000 British soldiers alone will go through that before this war is over. Right now, in this moment, you don't know that number. You just know that your feet are cold and wet, and you really, really hope they're still the right colour. A whistle sounds somewhere down the line. Not the terrible whistle, the one that means go over the top. This is softer, more routine. It's the signal for stand to. Stand to. Short for stand to arms. The order that comes every single morning before dawn and every single evening at dusk. The idea is simple enough. These are the most likely times for an enemy attack. Something about the changing light making it easier to advance unseen. So every soldier in the trench has to stand on the fire step, rifle ready, bayonet fixed, staring out into no man's land for signs of movement. You heave yourself up onto the fire step. Your joints protest. Your muscles ache. You've been sleeping, if you can call it that, for maybe 3 hours. That's about average. 3 hours of broken, fitful rest, constantly interrupted by the cold, the noise, the rats, and the ever-present fear that this might be the moment the Germans decide to come over. You fix your bayonet. The blade clicks into place on the end of your rifle. Around you, shapes are moving in the darkness. 9 other men in your section, all doing the same thing, rising from whatever position they'd managed to fall asleep in, checking their weapons, taking their places on the fire step. The corporal moves past you, a dark silhouette in the grey light. He doesn't say anything, just counts heads to make sure everyone's up. If you're not up for stand to, you're in serious trouble. Extra duties, loss of pay, confined to barracks when you finally get rotated out of the front line. Though honestly, at this point, the idea of barracks sounds like paradise. You peer over the parapet, carefully, very carefully, just enough to see. The Germans have snipers out there. Patient men with good rifles and better aim, and if you show your head for too long, you'll find out exactly how good they are. The parapet is the top of the trench wall, built up with sandbags to give you some protection, but sandbags aren't bulletproof. Not really. A high-velocity rifle round will punch right through them if it hits at the right angle. No man's land stretches out before you. 250 meters of absolute desolation. Every tree is gone. Not just dead, but shattered, blown to pieces by artillery shells until only black stumps remain. Every building, every hedge, every fence, every sign of normal human habitation has been erased. The ground looks like the surface of the moon. Craters everywhere, some of them deep enough to hide a truck, all of them filled with water and mud and God knows what else. And running through all of it, like the web of some enormous mechanical spider, is the barbed wire. Miles and miles of it, coils and tangles and curtains of the stuff, supported by wooden posts and metal stakes, forming a barrier between your trench and theirs. The wire is why nobody can move. The wire is why this whole war has bogged down into this nightmare of static positions and futile attacks. You can't get through the wire, not quickly, not quietly. And while you're trying, the machine guns open up and that's the end of you. Speaking of machine guns, there's one somewhere to your right. A German one. You know because you heard it yesterday when a patrol got caught out in the open. That distinctive sound. Not the crack of a rifle or the boom of artillery. Something else. A fast mechanical chattering, like a sewing machine made of death. A modern machine gun can fire 500 rounds per minute. One gun. One gunner. 500 opportunities per minute to put a hole in you. And they've got lots of guns out there. Lots and lots of guns. The light is growing now. That grey pre-dawn glow is turning pink and orange at the edges. The sun is coming up somewhere behind the German lines, which means you're looking straight into it. Another disadvantage. Another little way the geography of this particular stretch of trench is trying to kill you. Nothing moves out there. No shadowy figures creeping toward you through the mist. No mass of grey uniforms surging across the craters. Just emptiness, stillness, the corpses and the wire and the devastation, all painted in shades of grey and brown, gradually taking on colour as the light increases. You stand there for maybe an hour, watching, waiting, shivering. Your rifle is cold in your hands. Your breath comes out in little clouds that dissipate quickly in the morning air. Next to you, a soldier named Davies is breathing through his mouth because his nose is so stuffed up from the cold that he can't breathe any other way. On your other side, Murphy is silently crying. He's been doing that a lot lately. Nobody mentions it. Nobody judges him for it. You've all been there. You'll probably all be there again before this is over. And then finally the order comes. Stand down. 9 out of 10 of you can relax. Sort of. One man has to stay on watch, rotating every 2 hours throughout the day. The rest of you can step down from the fire step and try to remember what it feels like to be human for a little while. The corporal appears with a jar, a ceramic jar marked with the letters SRD, which officially stands for Supply Reserve Depot, but which everyone calls seldom reaches destination, because usually someone drinks it before it gets to you. Today, you're lucky. Today, the rum ration has actually arrived. He pours a measure into a brass cap, about the size of an egg cup, the 18-pounder shell cap protector, repurposed for measuring out military-grade rum. He hands it to you. You have to drink it right there, in front of him, so he knows you actually drank it and didn't try to save it or trade it for something else. The rum burn's going down. It's strong. stronger than anything you drank back home, but the warmth that spreads through your chest is worth it. For about 30 seconds, you actually feel something other than cold and wet and miserable. That's the point, you suppose. That brief moment of warmth, that tiny reminder that you're still alive. Breakfast comes next, or what passes for breakfast in this place. Bacon today, apparently. Someone's got a small fire going in a brazier. A little metal container barely bigger than a bucket, burning whatever fuel they could scrounge. The bacon sizzles and spits. The smell is almost obscenely good in this environment. Normal, domestic. A smell that belongs in kitchens and diners and homes, not in ditches full of mud and death. You eat quickly. Everyone does. Partly because you're starving, having burned through whatever calories yesterday's food provided just trying to stay warm overnight, and partly because you never know when something's going to interrupt the meal. A shell, a sniper, an order, something. The biscuits that come with the bacon are hard enough to break teeth. Military hardtack, the kind of thing that's designed to last forever rather than actually taste like food. You dunk yours in your tea to soften it up. The tea is weak and bitter, brewed with water of questionable origin, but it's hot. Hot liquid going into your body. At this point, that's all that matters. There's a weird kind of etiquette in the trenches, an unspoken agreement between you and the Germans across the way. During certain times, like morning meals, neither side shoots at the other. It's not official. Nobody put it in any treaty or order. It just evolved naturally, born out of the understanding that everyone needs to eat, and maybe, just maybe, the men in the other trench are as tired and miserable and hungry as you are. You don't talk about it. You don't acknowledge it. But you know it's there. A tiny sliver of humanity in an otherwise inhuman situation. After breakfast comes the part you've been dreading. Hygiene. Specifically shaving. You might think shaving would be the least of your worries out here. And you'd be right, in any normal situation. But this isn't a normal situation. Shaving in the trenches is compulsory. Not because anyone cares about your appearance, but because of the gas masks. The gas masks don't seal properly if you have stubble. And if your gas mask doesn't seal properly, and the Germans send a cloud of chlorine or phosgene rolling across no man's land, you're going to die. Slowly. Horribly. Drowning in the fluid filling your own lungs. So you shave. Every day, without fail. The problem is water. There's plenty of water in the trenches, obviously. The mud is saturated with it. But clean water, the kind you can actually put on your face without getting an infection, that's in short supply. So you do what everyone does. You save the last few mouthfuls of your morning tea. You let it cool down just enough that it won't burn your skin. And then you use it as shaving water. Your razor is a straight edge, not as sharp as it should be. Getting it sharpened means sending it back behind the lines and waiting for it to come back, which could take days. So you make do. You scrape the blade across your face, stretching your skin with your other hand, trying not to cut yourself. A cutout here isn't just painful. It's an invitation for infection. An infection in the trenches can turn into gangrene faster than you'd believe possible. The mirror is a small square of polished metal. You can barely see yourself in it. A young face looks back at you, aged beyond its years. You're 19 years old. You look 40. Everyone does out here. The exhaustion and the stress and the constant low-grade terror age you in ways that sleep can never undo. Your eyes are sunken. Your cheeks are hollow. There's a permanent crease between your eyebrows that wasn't there 6 months ago. You finish shaving. Put away your kit. Take a breath. And then the platoon sergeant arrives. He moves through the trench with the kind of casual authority that comes from years of military service, checking weapons, checking equipment, checking the state of the trench walls and the sandbags and the dugout entrances, looking for anything that's not up to standard, anything that could get someone killed or, worse from the army's perspective, reflect poorly on the unit. Your rifle passes inspection. You cleaned it yesterday, even though you were so tired you could barely see straight. You've learned. A dirty rifle jams. A jamming rifle gets you killed. Simple equation. The sergeant moves on. You relax just slightly. You've got a few hours now before your next turn on watch duty. A few hours to write a letter home maybe, or to catch some actual sleep, or just to sit and stare at the sandbag wall opposite you and try not to think about anything at all. Not that there's much to think about anyway. Not anymore. You used to think about all kinds of things, the future, your family, what you were going to do after the war. Now your thoughts have narrowed down to a small, focused point. Make it through the next hour, then the next hour after that, then the next. Don't think about tomorrow. Tomorrow is too far away. Just get through right now. The sun is up now. A pale winter sun that provides light but precious little warmth. The mud on the trench floor is beginning to dry on the surface, forming a thin crust that will break and squelch under your boots as soon as you walk on it. Above you, the sky is a pale grey blue, empty of clouds. A good day for aircraft, if there are any. A good day for artillery spotters to see exactly where your trench is. You find a spot against the wall and slide down into a sitting position. Your body moulds itself to the shape of the trench. Your eyes begin to drift closed, and somewhere out there, across no man's land, in a trench that looks exactly like yours, a German soldier is doing exactly the same thing. He's just had his breakfast, just finished his morning routine, just taken his turn on watch. He's 19 years old too, or maybe 20. He has a mother who writes him letters, and a father who tells people he's proud of his son. He has dreams and fears and a personality that exist completely independent of the uniform he wears. And if you ever meet him, you're going to try to kill him, and he's going to try to kill you. That's the deal. That's the arrangement. That's what both of you signed up for, or were drafted into, or somehow found yourselves trapped in. But for right now, in this quiet moment between the terrors, you're just two exhausted young men trying to survive another day in the mud. Your eyes close, your breathing slows, and somewhere in the distance, barely audible, the guns begin to rumble. The rumbling doesn't stop. You're used to distant artillery by now. It's like thunder that never quite arrives. A low, constant growl somewhere over the horizon. Could be 5 miles away. Could be 15. Sound does strange things out here. The flat, devastated landscape carries noise in ways that don't make sense. Sometimes you can hear a conversation in the German trench clear as day. Other times, a shell lands 50 yards away and you barely register it. But this rumbling is different. Closer. More insistent. Somewhere to the south, somebody's getting hammered. Poor bastards. You open your eyes. So much for sleep. The man next to you, a Lancashire lad named Billy Marsh, is already awake. He's maybe 17, though he swore blind to the recruiting sergeant he was 19. Nobody checked. Nobody cared. They needed bodies, and Billy had a body, and now that body is sitting in a trench in Belgium staring at a sandbag wall, with eyes that have seen too much for someone who should still be in school. Billy doesn't talk much anymore. When he first arrived 3 weeks ago, he wouldn't shut up. Questions about everything. What's that sound? Why do we do it this way? When do you think we'll attack? Now he just sits there, staring. Sometimes his hands shake. Sometimes they don't. You've learned not to mention it. On your other side, old George is snoring. His real name is George Whitfield, and he's not actually that old. 32, maybe 33. But out here, that makes him ancient. Most of the lads in your section are under 25. George has a wife back in Sheffield and 2 daughters he talks about constantly. Or used to. Lately he's gone quiet too. You all have. The corporal, a hard-faced Welshman named Brennan, appears at the end of your stretch of trench. He's got that look, the one that means there's work to be done. Right then, weapon inspection in 20 minutes. Half of you clean now, other half after. Davies, Murphy, Marsh, your first group. Rest of you, stay ready. Stay ready. That's the rule. Only half the section cleans their rifles at any given time. Because if the Germans decide to come over while everyone's got their weapon in pieces on a ground sheet, that's the end of your little group. So you work in shifts. Half cleaning, half watching. Always watching. You're in the second group, which means you've got 20 minutes to do nothing. 20 minutes of sitting against a mud wall, listening to distant guns, trying not to think about anything in particular. The weird part about trench life, the part nobody tells you before you get here, is how boring it is. You'd think, right, surrounded by the enemy, people dying every day, shells falling out of the sky, you'd be terrified every second, and you are terrified. Somewhere deep down, there's a cold knot of fear that never quite goes away. But on top of that fear, layered over it like a blanket, is this crushing, soul-destroying boredom. Nothing happens. Hours and hours and hours of nothing. You sit, you wait, you stare at walls made of sandbags and mud. You listen to the same men tell the same stories you've already heard a dozen times. You eat the same food. You drink the same tea. You do the same routines. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a voice keeps whispering that this might be your last day alive. But the rest of your brain is screaming that you'd give anything at all, for something to actually happen. A veteran of this war, a man who survived the whole thing from start to finish, later summed it up perfectly. He said the war was 90% bored stiff, 9% frozen stiff, and 1% scared stiff. That last 1% is the part that kills you, but it's the 90% that breaks you down first. Murphy finishes cleaning his rifle and reassembles it with quick, practiced movements. His hands have stopped shaking. They always stop when he's got something to focus on. It's when he's sitting still that the trembling starts. You've noticed this about him. About a lot of the men, actually. Motion helps. Activity helps. It's the stillness that gets inside your head. Your turn. You spread your ground sheet on the fire step and begin stripping your rifle. The Lee Enfield. 10 rounds in the magazine, another in the chamber if you're feeling lucky. Bolt action, which means you have to work it manually between each shot. The Germans have something similar. Different design, same basic idea, same basic purpose. You've fired this rifle maybe 24 times in actual combat. The rest of the time, you clean it, you oil it, you check it, you carry it, you sleep with it across your knees. It's become an extension of your body, this weapon. You know every scratch on the stock, every worn spot on the metal. You could strip it and reassemble it blindfolded. You've done it in the dark plenty of times. The mud is the enemy of rifles, gets into everything, clogs the action, fouls the barrel, turns a precision weapon into a club. So you clean every day, every single day, because a rifle that jams is a rifle that gets you killed. By the time you're done, the sun has climbed higher. Not that you can see it directly from down here in the trench. You can see a strip of sky, pale blue now, with clouds drifting past. Somewhere up there might be aircraft. Reconnaissance planes from both sides trying to photograph trench positions, spot artillery targets, gather intelligence. You hear them sometimes, a distant buzzing, like enormous insects. Occasionally one will get shot down and you'll see it spiral toward the earth trailing smoke. Then nothing. Then the buzzing again, a different plane, continuing where the last one left off. The platoon sergeant arrives around mid-morning, a professional soldier, career army, who's been doing this job since before you were born. He moves through the trench like a predator, eyes missing nothing, checks the weapons, checks the equipment, checks the state of the trench walls, the dugout entrances, the duck boards, looking for anything out of place, anything that might get someone killed, anything that might embarrass the unit. He stops in front of Murphy. Rifle. Murphy hands it over. The sergeant works the bolt, peers down the barrel, checks the magazine, grunts, hands it back, moves on. You breathe. Inspections are always tense. Get caught with a dirty rifle or equipment that's not up to standard and you're in trouble. Extra duties, lost pay, confined to barracks when you finally get rotated back behind the lines, and you need that rest time. God, you need it. The rotation. That's what keeps everyone sane, or as close to sane as anyone gets out here. 4 days in the front line trenches, the ones facing the enemy, the ones where the snipers can see you and the shells can reach you, and every moment carries the possibility of death. Then 4 days in support, the trenches behind the front line connected by those communication trenches that run at right angles, still dangerous, still uncomfortable, but not quite as immediate. You can sleep a little better, move around a little more freely. Then 8 days in reserve, behind all the trenches, in ruined farmhouses or tents, or sometimes actual buildings that still have roofs. Rest, real rest. Hot food that's actually hot when you eat it. Maybe a chance to wash. Maybe a chance to feel human again. That's the theory anyway. In practice, the rotation gets disrupted constantly. Units get moved, attacks get planned, casualties create gaps that need filling, but the basic rhythm is there. 4, 4, 8. Front, support, reserve. A cycle of misery, punctuated by brief periods of slightly less misery. You're on day 3 of your frontline stretch. 1 more day, if nothing goes wrong, and you'll be rotating back to support. 1 more day of this particular hell before you get to experience a slightly different hell. Something to look forward to. Midday arrives. You know because the food arrives. Men from the reserve positions bring it, up through the communication trenches. Big containers called Dixies, like oversized metal pots with handles on the sides. They carry them carefully, trying not to spill, trying not to attract attention from enemy observers who might call in artillery on anything that looks like a supply run. Today it's stew. Meat and vegetables, supposedly, though the meat is unidentifiable and the vegetables have been cooked into mush. It's warm. That's what matters. Warm food going into your stomach. Warmth spreading through your body. A small comfort in a place with precious few of them. You eat with your fingers mostly. Spoons if you've got them. Bread to soak up the liquid if there's bread to be had. Today, there's bread. Hard as a rock, 3 days old at least, but it softens in the stew and fills your belly. That's all you can ask. The tea comes with the meal. Always tea. The British Army runs on tea the way engines run on petrol. Strong, sweet tea that tastes faintly of the containers it was carried in. You drink it without complaint. You drink everything without complaint. And then, the thing everyone waits for. The thing that makes the whole miserable day worth enduring. Mail call. The postal system in this war is something else. A letter posted in London can reach the front lines in just a few days. Packages too, if they're small enough and labelled right. Families send all kinds of things. Food, cigarettes, socks. Little comforts that remind you there's a world beyond this trench, beyond this mud, beyond this endless grey landscape of death. The corporal distributes the mail, calls out names, hands over envelopes and parcels. Whitfield, Davies, Murphy, Marsh. Billy Marsh gets a letter from his mum. You can tell by the way his face changes when he sees the handwriting. That scared, hollow look softens for just a moment. He tucks the letter inside his tunic without reading it, saving it, rationing it, making it last. Murphy gets a package, small, wrapped in brown paper. He opens it carefully, like it might contain treasure. Inside, a pair of socks and a small jar of jam. He stares at them for a long moment. Then he looks up. Anyone want jam? It's shared around, of course. Everything is. That's how it works in a section. When one man gets a luxury, everyone benefits. Because next time, someone else will get something, and they'll share too. A small economy of kindness operating inside a machine of destruction. Your name doesn't get called. Not today. Your mum writes when she can, but she's got 4 other children and a job in a munitions factory and not much time for letter writing. Your dad doesn't write at all. Wouldn't know what to say if he tried. That's all right. You don't know what to say either. What would you tell them? Everything's fine, doing well, having a lovely time. The afternoon stretches out, long, empty. The sun moves across that strip of visible sky. The distant guns continue their rumbling, sometimes closer, sometimes farther. Once a shell lands maybe 200 yards to your left and everyone tenses, grabs weapons, waits for more. Nothing comes, a stray round. Bad aim or good luck, depending on your perspective. You try to sleep, but your body won't cooperate. Too tense, too wired, too aware of where you are and what's around you. So you just sit there, back against the trench wall, eyes half closed, drifting in that strange space between consciousness and unconsciousness. Men talk in low voices, share cigarettes, tell jokes you've heard before. Someone produces a crumpled newspaper, 3 weeks out of date, and reads the headlines aloud. News from a world that feels like it exists on another planet. Politics, sports, society gossip. Things that mattered once, things that don't matter anymore. Someone mentions the Wipers Times, a magazine put together by soldiers stationed near Ypres, which everyone pronounces Wipers because that's easier than the French way. They found an old printing press in a ruined building and started publishing their own little newspaper. Poems and jokes and essays, all of it dripping with the dark humour that develops when you're surrounded by death. The officers don't like it much. The men love it. That's one of the strange things about this place. The creativity that emerges from the boredom and the horror. Men write poetry in the trenches, draw pictures, compose songs, carve things out of shell casings and spent bullets. The human need to create something, anything, even in the middle of all this destruction. The light is starting to change. That golden afternoon glow is fading toward evening. Shadows are lengthening in the trench. The temperature, never warm to begin with, is dropping again. Evening stand to is coming. Another hour of standing on the fire step, bayonet fixed, staring into no man's land, waiting for an attack that probably won't come. The Germans like dawn and dusk for assaults. Something about the changing light, something about catching the defenders off guard, so you stand to twice a day, every day, just in case. You check your rifle, make sure the magazine is full, make sure the bayonet is secure, the cold metal is familiar under your fingers, comforting in a horrible way. This weapon might kill you. This weapon might save you. Both things are true at the same time. Billy Marsh is reading his letter now. You can see his lips moving slightly as he works through the words. Whatever his mum wrote, it's making him smile. A small smile, barely there, but a smile nonetheless. You look away. Give him his privacy. Let him have this moment. Murphy's already on the fire step, taking an early watch. His silhouette is dark against the fading sky. He's not shaking right now. Standing still, rifle ready, eyes fixed on the distance, doing his job, being a soldier. Old George is awake, sitting against the trench wall staring at nothing, thinking about Sheffield probably, about his wife and his 2 daughters and the life he had before all this started, the life he might have again if he survives, the life that's waiting for him, somewhere on the other side of this war. You wonder what you're waiting for, what life is waiting for you. You try to picture yourself after all this is over, assuming you survive, and you can't quite see it. The future is a blank, a void. All that exists is now, this trench, this mud, this endless present moment. The corporal's whistle sounds. Stand to, you rise. Your joints protest, your muscles ache. You climb onto the fire step, shoulder to shoulder with the other men in your section. Fix your bayonet, that familiar click. The sun is sinking behind the German lines. The sky's turning orange and pink and purple. It would be beautiful in other circumstances. Here, it just means another dangerous hour is beginning. You peer over the parapet, careful. Quick glances, then back down. The light is tricky, plays games with your eyes, makes shadows look like movement, makes stillness look like threat. No man's land stretches out before you, silent, empty, waiting. Somewhere out there, in the opposite trench, German soldiers are doing exactly what you're doing, standing, watching, waiting, their version of stand to, their version of this ritual that both sides perform twice a day, every day, in this strange dance of mutual destruction. The hour passes slowly. No movement, no attack. Just the gradual darkening of the sky and the gradual cooling of the air and the gradual tightening of the fear in your chest. And then, finally, the whistle for stand down. You step off the fire step. Breathe. Let some of the tension drain from your shoulders. Night is coming, and night in the trenches is a whole different kind of hell. The darkness comes fast out here. 1 minute you can see the outline of the German wire against the sky. The next, it's gone. Swallowed up by night so complete it feels like someone dropped a blanket over the world. No streetlights, no windows glowing, no moon tonight. Just clouds and blackness, and the sound of your own breathing. Supper arrives with the darkness. Hot soup this time, brought up from the rear in those same metal containers. Murphy's got a small jar of HP sauce that came in a package from home last week, and he passes it around. A few drops in your soup, and suddenly it tastes like something, like food, like civilization. Amazing what a bit of brown sauce can do for your outlook on life. You eat quickly, sitting on the fire step, bowl balanced on your knee. The soup warms your insides. That's the main thing. Warmth from the inside out. fighting against the cold that's seeping in from everywhere else. Night is when the real work happens. During the day, you can't move much. Any movement above the trench line risks a sniper bullet. Any gathering of men risks an artillery strike. So you sit. You wait. You try to make yourself as small and invisible as possible. But at night, in the darkness, you can actually do things. Repair the trench walls, fill sandbags, string new wire, carry supplies, all the tasks that keep this underground city functioning, all done in the dark, by feel and memory, trying not to make any noise that might attract machine gun fire. Tonight, though, before any of that starts, there's something else on the schedule. Foot inspection. Billy Marsh is your partner for this. Has been since you both arrived in the same batch of replacements, back when you were both still new enough to be shocked by everything. The army pairs you up, see? Makes each man responsible for the feet of the other. Because you can't see your own feet properly down here, and by the time you notice something's wrong, it might be too late. You find a spot in one of the dugouts, a shallow cave carved into the trench wall, reinforced with timber, just big enough for a few men to sit out of the weather. There's a candle burning, stuck to a ration tin with its own melted wax. The light flickers and dances, throwing shadows everywhere. Billy pulls off his boots. It takes effort. The leather is soaked through, stiff with dried mud on the outside, damp and soft on the inside. His puttees, the cloth strips wound around his lower legs, are caked with filth. Everything is filth out here. You stop noticing after a while. His socks come off next, or what's left of them. More holes than fabric at this point. The wool has felted together in places, matted with sweat and mud and God knows what else. And then you see his feet. They're white. Not healthy white. Not the pale of someone who just needs some sun. This is a waxy, corpse-like white. The colour of something that's been underwater too long. The skin is wrinkled and soft, almost puffy. When you press a finger against his heel, the indentation stays there for a long moment before slowly filling back in. How do they feel, you ask? Billy shrugs. Can't feel much of anything, to be honest. That's not good. Numbness is one of the first signs. The cold and the wet cut off circulation, and when circulation goes, feeling goes with it. Then the tissue starts to die, and once tissue starts dying, you've got maybe a few days before the whole foot goes black and the surgeons have to cut it off. 75,000 British soldiers will lose toes or feet to this before the war ends. You don't know that number, sitting here in this flickering candlelight, but you've seen enough to know it's bad. You've seen men carried out on stretchers, their boots cut away to reveal feet that look like rotten meat. You've heard the screaming from the casualty clearing stations when the surgeons do what they have to do. You pull out the tin of whale oil, standard issue, supposed to waterproof the skin, keep the moisture out, maintain blood flow. Whether it actually works is anyone's guess, but you rub it in anyway. Billy's feet are cold and clammy under your hands. The oil is thick and greasy. It gets under your fingernails between your fingers. The smell is exactly what you'd expect. Industrial, fishy, wrong. Wiggle your toes, you tell him. He tries. 3 of them move, 2 don't. We need to get you dry socks. Haven't got any dry socks. I've got a spare pair, mostly dry. Keep them. You'll need them. That's how it goes out here. Everyone looking out for everyone else while simultaneously running out of everything. The supply chain brings food and ammunition first. Socks and oil and creature comforts come second, if they come at all. You make do with what you've got. You finish with Billy's feet and he does yours. Same ritual in reverse. Your feet aren't as bad as his, but they're not good either. That greyish tinge, that soft, wrinkled texture, the beginning of something that could get very bad very fast if you don't stay on top of it. After feet, there's another ritual to observe, one that happens every night, in every dugout, in every section along this whole miserable front. Delousing. The lice are everywhere, in your uniform, in your hair, in every fold and seam and crevice of your body. Tiny, pale, almost invisible until they move, and they're always moving, crawling, biting, breeding, a constant maddening itch that never quite goes away. The men call it chatting when they sit together and pick lice off each other. Nobody knows why. Maybe because you chat while you do it. Maybe because the lice are company of a sort, the only living things that want to be close to you out here. You unbutton your tunic in the candlelight, run your thumbnail along the seams of the fabric. That's where they hide, in the seams, where the cloth is doubled and warm. You can feel them pop under your nail when you find them. A small, wet crunch. Disgusting. Satisfying. Everyone you kill is one less biting you tonight. The men who've been here longest say the lice are worse on fresh bodies. Something about new blood, new skin, something the little bastards can't resist. When you first arrived, you were covered within a day, absolutely crawling with them. You scratched until you bled, and still they kept coming. Now you're used to it. Sort of. You've learned to live with the constant low-level itch, the feeling of things moving in your clothes, the knowledge that you're basically a walking buffet for parasites. It's just another thing. Another way this place breaks you down, piece by piece. The lice carry trench fever. That's what the doctors say. A disease that hits like the worst flu you've ever had. Only it lasts for weeks and leaves you so weak you can barely stand. Men get evacuated for it, sent back to hospitals in England, where there are clean sheets and nurses and the possibility of survival. Some of them don't come back. Some of them are glad not to. Jameson, down the line, has got it bad now. His cough has gotten worse. His fever spikes at night. He shivers even when wrapped in every blanket we can spare. The stretcher bearers are supposed to come for him tomorrow. Supposed to. If they can make it through. If nothing goes wrong between now and then. You finish with your tunic and start on your trousers. More lice. Always more. It's like trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon. But you do it anyway because doing nothing feels worse. The candle sputters. Burns low. Someone finds another one and lights it from the dying flame of the first. The dugout smells like bodies and whale oil and candle wax and mud. Earthy, human, almost cozy, in a horrible sort of way. And then you hear them. The rats. They come out at night, really come out. During the day you see them sometimes scurrying along the duckboards, hiding in corners. But at night they own the trenches. Hundreds of them. Thousands, maybe. Fat and sleek and bold, feeding on things you try not to think about too hard. There are two kinds, they say. Black rats and brown rats. The brown ones are the worst. Bigger. More aggressive. They'll eat anything. Rations left unguarded for even a minute. Leather straps and equipment. The bodies in no man's land. The ones nobody can retrieve, and sometimes, when they can't find anything else, they'll eat you, not dead you, living you, sleeping you. They go for the face first, the lips and the eyelids, soft tissue, easy pickings. Men have woken up with chunks missing from their ears, their noses, their fingers. It happens. Not often, but often enough that everyone knows the stories. You can hear them now, moving through the trench outside the dugout, that scrabbling, scratching sound of claws on wood and mud, squeaking to each other in the darkness. Hundreds of small feet, hundreds of small mouths, hundreds of small hungry bodies looking for food. Old George has a trick. He showed you once. You lie on your back with something on your legs, a ration tin maybe, or a pack, and you wait, perfectly still, eyes closed, breathing slow, and when you feel the weight of a rat settle on your legs, you wait a beat longer, then suddenly heave upward with both knees. The rat goes flying, lands somewhere in the darkness, squeaks with outrage, and for a moment, just a moment, you've won a tiny victory against the endless scuttling invasion. Not that it helps much. They always come back. There are too many of them and too few of you. The whole trench system is their territory now. We're just visiting. Murphy goes outside to take a piss and comes back swearing. Stepped on one, he says. Felt it squash under his boot. The sound it made. The feeling through the leather. He won't describe it in detail, and nobody asks him to. The hours pass. Slow, cold, dark hours filled with small sounds and smaller fears. You try to sleep, but the rats are too close tonight. Every noise makes you twitch. Every brush of air against your skin feels like something crawling. At some point, someone screams. Not close. Somewhere down the line. A high, ragged sound that cuts through the night and then stops. Abruptly. Could be anything. A nightmare, a rat bite, a sniper who got lucky, a gas shell that nobody heard coming. You don't know. You won't find out until morning. The man on watch at your section's stretch of parapet doesn't move, doesn't investigate. That's not his job. His job is to watch no man's land and sound the alarm if the Germans are coming. Everything else is someone else's problem. Billy is sitting next to you, knees drawn up to his chest, arms wrapped around them. He's not sleeping either. His eyes catch the faint starlight filtering down from above. My feet, he says quietly. They're getting worse. I know. What happens if they don't get better? You don't answer. You both know what happens. The same thing that happens to everyone whose body starts to fail out here. Evacuation if you're lucky. Amputation if you're not. A ticket home missing pieces of yourself. Or you stay. You keep going. You rub on the whale oil and you hope for the best and you try to make it through one more day. Because that's all any of you can do. One more day. One more night. One more hour. Breaking time down into pieces small enough to survive. Dawn starts as a grey smear on the eastern horizon. That familiar lightening of the sky that means another stand-to is coming. Another day is beginning. Another cycle of the same routine, the same dangers, the same grinding misery. Your body aches in places you didn't know could ache. Your feet throb with cold. Your skin crawls with a memory of lice, even the ones you killed. Your ears still echo with rat sounds, but you're alive, still here, still breathing. That's got to count for something. The whistle sounds. Stand to. Time to climb back onto the fire step and stare into the void and wait for an attack that probably won't come. You grab your rifle, fix your bayonet. Join the other shadows rising in the grey light. Another day in the trenches. The warning comes as a shout. Gas! Gas! You're fumbling for your respirator before your brain even processes the word. It's reflex now. Drilled into you. The metal container on your chest. The straps that go over your head. The rubber seal that has to fit tight against your face. All of it happening in seconds because seconds are all you have. The mask goes on. You breathe in, and the rubber sucks against your face. Good. Seal is good. You can taste the chemicals in the filter, that strange metallic tang that means the thing is working. Your vision narrows to 2 small eyepieces, foggy already from your breath. And then you wait. The gas horn is sounding somewhere down the line. That eerie, wailing note that means the worst thing you can imagine is drifting toward you on the breeze. Other men are scrambling for their masks, cursing, praying, some of them crying. Old George has got his on already, calm as anything. Billy is struggling with the straps. Murphy helps him, hands steady even now. You peer over the parapet, just for a second, just long enough to see it. The cloud, greenish yellow, maybe 20 feet high, rolling across no man's land like fog off the sea, only this fog kills. It moves slow, almost lazy, pushed along by a breeze you can't even feel down here in the trench. Sunlight catches the top of it and makes it glow, this horrible, beautiful colour like nothing in nature, and it's coming right at you. The first gas attack in this war happened in April of 1915, over near Ypres. The Germans released 150 tons of chlorine from cylinders they'd hidden in their trenches. A green cloud 50 feet high and 4 miles long rolled toward the French lines. Nobody knew what it was. Nobody had masks. Nobody had any idea what was about to happen. Over 1,000 men died in minutes, drowning on dry land, their lungs filling with fluid as the gas burned through tissue and turned breath to acid. The ones who survived, and there weren't many, described chaos. Men running, men screaming, men clawing at their throats as their bodies betrayed them. That was years ago. You weren't here for it, but you've heard the stories. Everyone has. And now, here you are, watching another cloud drift toward your position, and all you can do is hope your mask works. The smell reaches you first, even through the respirator. Chlorine has a distinctive odour. People say it's like a mix of pineapple and pepper. That's not quite right, but it's close, sharp, chemical, wrong. Your body knows this smell means danger even if your brain can't explain why. The cloud reaches the trench. Everything goes yellow-green. The world outside your tiny eyepieces turns into this swirling, shifting mass of poison. You can't see the man next to you, can't see the trench wall, can't see anything but gas, and you can hear them. The men whose masks didn't seal properly. The men who were too slow getting them on, the men who had leaky filters or broken straps or just bad luck, coughing, choking, retching. The sounds a human body makes when it's trying to breathe and can't. There's a kid down the line, new arrival, maybe a week in the trenches. His mask isn't on right. You can see him struggling with it, tearing at his own face, trying to fix whatever's gone wrong. And then he pulls it off, just rips it off his head. Because he can't breathe in the mask, so he thinks maybe he can breathe without it. He takes one gasp of the gas and goes down. You want to help him. Every instinct screams at you to help him, but you can't take your mask off. That's the rule. That's the thing they drill into you over and over. Never take off your mask in a gas cloud. Not for any reason, not even to help a friend, so you watch him die. It takes a while. Chlorine doesn't kill instantly, not unless the concentration is massive. First the eyes go red and watery, tears streaming down the face. Then the throat closes up, the body trying to protect itself from the burning. Then the lungs start to fill, fluid building, up, drowning the victim from the inside. The kid is on his knees now, then on his side, then still. The cloud passes eventually, they always do. Wind shifts or the gas disperses or enough time goes by that the concentration drops below lethal levels. You don't know how long it's been. 5 minutes, 10, an hour. Time doesn't work normally in a gas attack. When the all clear sounds, you pull off your mask and gasp clean air. Your face is covered in sweat. Your hands are shaking. Your heart is beating so hard you can feel it in your throat. The kid is dead. 3 others in your section are down, coughing blood, struggling to breathe. They'll be evacuated if the stretcher bearers can reach them. Some of them might survive, some won't. You've seen gas casualties before. You know what the next few days look like for them. Billy is alive, his mask held. Murphy is alive. Old George is alive. The corporal is alive. You're alive. That's the count. That's what matters. That's all that matters. But here's the thing about gas warfare that nobody tells you until you've lived through it. The fear doesn't go away. Every breeze now feels like a threat. Every strange smell makes your heart race. Every time the wind shifts, you're reaching for your mask, checking the straps, making sure the seal is good. Gas fright, they call it. Soldiers who've been through attacks develop it. Some of them get evacuated for it, not because they're physically wounded, but because their minds can't take the constant terror anymore. You understand now. You understand how a man can be so scared of something he can't see that he loses his ability to function. The Germans keep developing new gases. That's the really twisted part. It's not just chlorine anymore. They've got phosgene now. Smells like freshly cut hay, they say. Pleasant almost. And that's how it kills you. You don't realize you've been gassed until hours later, when your lungs start filling up. Men have walked around feeling fine for a whole day and then dropped dead without warning. And there's mustard gas. That's the worst of them. Doesn't kill you right away, usually. Just burns. Your skin, your eyes, your throat. Everything the gas touches turns to blisters and sores and agony. Men have been blinded by it. Men have had their lungs destroyed by it. Men have lived for weeks in hospitals, their bodies covered in weeping sores, wishing they were dead. By the time this war ends, 100,000 tons of chemical weapons will have been used. 500,000 men will be injured. Nearly 30,000 will be killed outright. And those are just the numbers from the attacks themselves. Nobody counts the ones who die later, months or years down the road, from lungs that never quite healed. The wind is the thing. The wind decides everything. If it's blowing the right direction, the gas reaches the enemy trenches and does its horrible work. If it shifts, even slightly, the gas can blow back on the men who released it. There's no controlling it, no predicting it, just luck. Good luck or bad luck, depending on which side you're on. Sometimes both sides get gassed at once. The cloud drifts over one trench, then the other. Everyone choking together. Everyone dying together. This bizarre, horrifying equality of suffering. The stretcher bearers arrive to collect the casualties. They work in silence, faces grim behind their masks. They've done this before. They'll do it again. Everyone has their job in this machine of death, and theirs is collecting the broken pieces. You help carry the kid's body. He's lighter than you expected. Just a boy, really. Probably lied about his age to get here. They all do. Thousands of boys in a man's war, and most of them don't make it home. His eyes are still open, red-rimmed, staring at nothing. You close them. It's the least you can do. The afternoon drags on. The gas is dissipated now, blown away to poison some other stretch of trench or disperse into nothing. But the smell lingers, in the mud, in the sandbags, in your uniform, that chemical stench that you'll never quite get out of your nose. Men are talking about the attack, processing it the way soldiers process everything, through dark humour and grim acceptance. Someone makes a joke about the kid's mask. Someone else tells them to shut up. Tensions are high. They always are after a gas attack. Billy hasn't said a word since the cloud passed. He's sitting against the trench wall, knees drawn up, arms wrapped around them. That same position he was in last night. The position of someone trying to make himself as small as possible. You sit down next to him. Don't say anything. Just sit. After a while he speaks. Quiet. Almost a whisper. I thought I was going to die. Yeah. Like really die. Right there. I thought that was it. I know. How do you do it? How do you just keep going? You don't have a good answer for that. Because the truth is, you don't know. You just do. You wake up and you put on your equipment and you do your duties and you try to stay alive for one more day. That's it. That's the whole strategy. Survive until tomorrow. Repeat. You get used to it, you say finally. Sort of, Billy laughs. It's not a happy sound. That's the worst part, isn't it? Getting used to it. He's right. That is the worst part. The human capacity to adapt to horror, to normalize the abnormal, to accept the unacceptable. You've watched men die and gone back to eating breakfast. You've been shot at and then joked about it an hour later. You've seen things that would drive a normal person insane, and somehow you're still here, still functioning, still putting one foot in front of the other. Is that strength, or is it something else? Some kind of damage that lets you keep moving when every part of you wants to stop? You don't know. You probably never will. The sun is setting now. Another day ending. Another stand to coming. The routine continues. Gas attack or no gas attack. The war doesn't care about your fear or your trauma or your dead friends. The war just keeps rolling forward, grinding everyone under its wheels. You check your mask again. 3rd time since the attack. 4th. You've lost count. The seal is still good. The straps are still tight. The filter hasn't been used up yet. All the things you need to know to stay alive. Old George watches you check it. He doesn't say anything, just nods. He's been here longer than anyone. He's seen more gas attacks than he can count. If anyone understands the need to check and recheck, it's him. First one's always the worst, he says finally. That wasn't my first. First one that close, though. First one where you watched a man die. You don't respond. He's right, of course. You've been near gas attacks before, heard them happening to other units, seen the aftermath. But this was different. This was inches away. This was watching the life leave a boy's body while you stood there, helpless, breathing through a mask that might fail at any moment. It doesn't get easier, George continues, just so you know, but you learn to manage it. How? He shrugs. You find things to focus on, your mates, your duties, the small stuff, a cup of tea, a letter from home, the sunrise, anything that reminds you there's still something worth living for. The sunset is painting the sky orange and red. Beautiful colours over a horrible landscape. The war destroys everything except the sky. The sky just keeps doing what it's always done, no matter how much blood soaks into the ground below. You think about the kid, his face, his eyes, the way he ripped off his mask because panic overrode training. You'll remember him for the rest of your life, however long that turns out to be. One more ghost to carry around, one more face in the collection. The whistle sounds, stand to, you rise, grab your rifle, climb onto the fire step, fix your bayonet. The familiar routine, the familiar sounds, the familiar weight of the weapon in your hands. Somewhere out there, across no man's land, German soldiers are doing the same thing. Some of them gassed men today, some of them will be gassed tomorrow. The cycle continues. Attack and counter-attack. Gas and counter-gas. Everyone poisoning everyone else while the politicians negotiate and the generals plan and the war drags on and on and on. The light fades, the stars come out, the trenches settle into their nighttime rhythms, and you stand there, watching the darkness, breathing through your mouth because you can still taste chlorine in the air, waiting for something that might never come or might come at any second. That's life in the trenches. That's what this war has made of you. A man who stands in the dark, afraid of the wind. The bread arrives 8 days after it was baked. You know this because someone scratched the date into the crust before it left the field bakery. A little joke from the cooks, maybe. Way of saying sorry in advance. Because by the time a loaf travels from the rear areas through the supply chain and down the communication trenches to your section of the front line, it's not really bread anymore. It's more like a brick. A brown, crusty brick that could probably stop a bullet. Murphy's trying to break off a piece with his hands. No luck. He switches to his bayonet, jabbing the tip into the crust and levering. A chunk breaks off and goes spinning into the mud. For God's sake, he mutters. Old George has a trick for this. He shows Murphy how to smash the loaf against the trench wall, letting the impact crack it into manageable pieces. Then you collect the fragments, put them in your mess tin with whatever else you can scrounge, add water, and boil the whole thing into a kind of porridge. It's not good. Nothing out here is good, but it's food, and food is what keeps you alive. The British Army has 300,000 people working just to feed soldiers in the field. 300,000 cooks and supply workers and transport drivers, moving food from ports in England across the Channel and up to the front. 3.25 million tons of supplies during this war. Numbers so big they stop meaning anything, and after all that effort, after all those people and all that money and all that work, what you actually get is stale bread and canned mystery meat. The supply chain is a marvel of logistics, supposedly. Ships cross the Channel day and night. Trains run from the ports to the railheads. Horse-drawn wagons carry supplies from the railheads to the rear areas, and then men on foot carry it the last stretch through the communication trenches to the front line. Somewhere along that chain, things go wrong. Food gets delayed. Hot meals arrive cold. Fresh bread turns stale. The Germans shell supply routes and blow up dumps full of rations. U-boats sink ships full of flour. By the time anything reaches your mess tin, it's been through a journey that would exhaust Odysseus. Bully beef. That's what they call the tinned corned beef that makes up most of your protein. Comes in 12-ounce cans with a little key on the side that you twist to peel back the lid. The meat inside is grey and fatty, compressed into a solid block that you have to chip at with your bayonet to break apart. Nobody likes bully beef. You'd think, with millions of men eating it every day for years, the army would figure out that it's terrible, but they keep sending it. Tin after tin after tin, piling up in supply dumps, getting distributed to units who open them with the same mixture of hunger and disgust. The fat is the worst part. In winter, it's solid and white, like lard. You can scrape it off if you're patient. But in summer, it melts into this oily, greasy liquid that coats everything, gets on your fingers, your uniform, the inside of your mouth, and it's salty. So salty that eating a full tin makes you desperate for water, and water out here is rationed, carried up in containers that may or may not have been cleaned since the last time someone filled them with petrol. Men have gotten creative with bully beef They fry it with crushed biscuits to make rissoles. They mix it into stews to stretch the flavour. They do anything they can to make it taste like something other than salty, metallic mystery meat from a can. There's another tinned food that's somehow even worse. Makanoshi, they call it, named after the company that makes it. Supposedly a stew of meat and vegetables, but what you actually get is a thin, watery broth with chunks of turnip and carrot floating in it. The meat, if you can find it, is gristle and fat. Warmed in the tin, makanoshi is edible, goes the saying. Cold, it's a man killer. You've had it both ways. The saying is accurate. The biscuits are another adventure. Hard tack, basically. Thick, dense crackers that were probably invented during the last war, or the war before that. They're so hard that you literally cannot bite into them. Murphy tried once just to prove a point and nearly cracked a tooth. The approved method is to smash them against something solid. A rock, a wall, the butt of your rifle if you're desperate. Then you soak the fragments in water or tea for hours, maybe days, until they soften enough to chew. Some men add condensed milk if they've got it. Makes a kind of sweet sludge that's actually not terrible. But the real culinary innovation out here is the sandbag. Someone figured out that if you take whatever food you've got, dump it in a sandbag, tie off the top, and boil the whole thing in water, you end up with something resembling a meal. Stale bread, potatoes if anyone's got them, onions, raisins, whatever's available. It all goes in the bag, gets cooked together, and comes out as this strange, sandy, mixed-up mess that tastes like desperation and creativity in equal measure. The sandbag adds a certain flavour. Earthy, fibrous. You don't want to think too hard about where that bag has been or what was in it before. You just eat and try to be grateful. By the winter of 1916, things get worse. The German submarine blockade is strangling supply lines. Flour becomes scarce. The bread, already terrible, gets even more strange. They start making it with dried, ground turnips instead of wheat. The result is dense and grey and gives everyone stomach problems. Men joke that the turnip bread is harder than the biscuits. They're not wrong. The meat ration drops too. At the start of the war, soldiers were supposed to get 10 ounces of meat a day. By now it's down to 6, and for units behind the front line, they're only getting meat on 9 days out of every 30. The main meal becomes pea soup with lumps of horse meat floating in it. Yes, horse meat. From the thousands of horses that die every week from shell fire and exhaustion, and all the other ways this war kills things. Nothing gets wasted out here, not even the animals. Nobody talks about eating horse at home. In your letters you just say the food is fine, everything is fine, the weather is nice, miss you terribly, love to mum. You don't mention the horse or the turnip bread or the sandbag stew or the bully beef that makes you want to vomit. What would be the point? Parcels from home are what keep you sane. Billy got one last week. His mum sent a trench cake. It arrived crushed and stale, 3 weeks old, wrapped in brown paper that was falling apart. But inside was this dense, dark, beautiful thing. Made with whatever his mum could get under rationing back home. Vinegar and baking soda instead of eggs. Cocoa to mask the bland flour. Dried fruit for sweetness. It was hard as a rock. Took proper effort to cut. And it was the best thing any of you had eaten in months. The whole section shared it. That's how it works. When someone gets something good, everyone benefits. A slice of cake, a jar of jam, a tin of sardines. These small luxuries become currency, become bonds, become the things that hold you together when everything else is falling apart. But there's one ration that never fails to lift spirits: the rum. It comes in those ceramic jars marked SRD. Officially, that stands for Supply Reserve Depot, but the men have their own interpretations. Soon runs dry, seldom reaches destination, service rum diluted. The corporal measures it out each morning. A little cap full for each man, just a few sips worth. But those sips are precious. The warmth spreading through your chest, the slight blur at the edges of reality, the moment, just a moment, when things don't seem quite so terrible. Some commanders don't approve of the rum ration, think it makes the men soft or dependent. But the ones who've actually been in the trenches understand. Out here, the rum isn't about getting drunk. It's about survival. About having one small thing to look forward to in a day filled with misery. Liquid courage, they call it. And they're right. It takes courage to stand up after a gas attack, to go over the top into machine gun fire, to wake up each morning and keep going when everything in you wants to stop. The rum helps. Not much, but enough. The days blur together. That's the strange thing about life in the trenches. Moment to moment it feels endless. Each hour drags on forever. The waiting, the watching, the terrible boredom of sitting in a hole in the ground while the world burns around you. But when you try to remember individual days, they all blend into one. Was that shelling 2 days ago or 2 weeks ago? Did Jameson get evacuated yesterday or last month? Time stops working properly. There's just now. This trench. This meal. This breath. This heartbeat. The routine helps. Stand to at dawn. Breakfast. Weapon cleaning. Foot inspection. Lunch. Free time. Stand to at dusk. Supper. Night duties. Sleep if you can. Repeat. The same pattern. Day after day. Week after week, month after month. Men find ways to fill the time. Writing letters is the big one. The postal service in this war is remarkable. 2 billion letters sent during the conflict. 2 billion pieces of paper covered in words of love and longing and lies about how fine everything is. Men sit for hours with pencil and paper, trying to find the right things to say to people who could never understand what this place is really like. Some men carve things. Take the hard biscuits and turn them into picture frames. Take shell casings and shape them into vases or letter openers. Take bullets and twist them into rings. Trench art, they call it. The creative impulse doesn't die just because everything around you is dying. Some men draw. Sketch the trenches, the landscape, each other's faces. Some men write poetry, dark, bitter, beautiful words about mud and death and the absurdity of it all. These poems will survive the war, will be read in schools decades from now, will help people who weren't here understand a little bit of what it was like. There's a sergeant in the next section who plays harmonica. Some nights, when things are quiet, you can hear him. Old songs from back home, music hall tunes that everyone knows the words to. It shouldn't work, a harmonica in a war zone. But somehow it does. Somehow those few notes drifting through the darkness make things feel less desperate. Cards are popular too. Poker mostly. Men gamble with cigarettes since money doesn't mean much out here. What would you spend it on anyway? There's nowhere to go, nothing to buy, just mud and wire and the endless waiting. Sometimes, in the quiet afternoons, football breaks out in the communication trenches. Not a real match, just a few men kicking around a ball made of rags tied together. Running is difficult in the narrow space, the mud grabbing at your boots with every step. But for a few minutes, you can pretend you're somewhere else. Pretend this is just a game and not a war. And some men just talk. The Trench magazine makes its rounds every few weeks. The Wipers Times, they call it. Started by some lad stationed near Ypres who found an old printing press in a bombed-out building. They got it working somehow and started publishing their own little newspaper. Poems and jokes and mock advertisements and commentary on the war that the officers don't quite approve of. Someone passes you a copy, dog-eared and mud-stained, read by dozens of hands before it reached yours. You flip through the pages, reading by candlelight in the dugout. There's a poem about rats, darkly funny. There's a fake advertisement for a trench tour company, promising all the mud and disease a man could want. There's a letter to the editor complaining about the quality of German shells. Not explosive enough, apparently. The writer demands the enemy up their game. You laugh. Actually laugh. The sound surprises you. It's been a while. That's the thing about humour out here. It's not the kind that would make sense back home. It's twisted and dark, and often about death. But it works. It breaks something loose inside you, reminds you that you're still human, still capable of finding absurdity in the middle of hell. The boredom would break you without these small escapes. That's what nobody tells you about war. The waiting is almost worse than the fighting. At least when shells are falling, you're doing something. You're reacting. You're alive in this immediate visceral way. But the waiting, the endless, agonizing waiting, sitting in a hole in the ground day after day, knowing that violence could erupt at any second, but mostly it doesn't. Just nothing. Hours of nothing. Your mind turning in circles, eating itself, dwelling on fears and memories and all the things you're trying not to think about. Men go mad from the boredom. You've seen it. Soldiers who start talking to themselves, who see things that aren't there, who snap over something tiny, something meaningless, because all that pressure building up has to go somewhere. You learn more about the men in your section than you ever learned about friends back home. Old George tells you about his daughters. The older one wants to be a nurse. The younger one loves horses. His wife works in a factory now, making shells that might end up falling on German trenches. He thinks about that sometimes. The weird circularity of it all. Billy talks about football. Used to play for a local club before the war. Scored 15 goals one season. His coach said he had potential, might even make it to a professional team someday. Now his feet are rotting and his hands shake and he hasn't kicked a ball in 2 years. Murphy talks about his sweetheart. Met her at a dance 3 months before he enlisted. They've exchanged 47 letters. He's counted. He keeps every one of them in an oilcloth pouch in his tunic close to his heart. Romantic and practical at the same time. The letters would catch a bullet before his chest would. You talk too. About home, about before, about the version of yourself that existed in that other life. The one where you went to work and came home and ate dinner with your family and slept in a bed and never once worried about whether the wind would shift and bring poison gas into your lungs. That person feels like a stranger now. The sun is setting again. Another day ending. You've lost count of how many. Could check in a diary if you kept one, but you stopped writing things down months ago. What would you say? Same as yesterday. Same as tomorrow. Still alive. Still waiting. Still eating bully beef and turnip bread and thanking God for every sip of rum that takes the edge off. Somewhere out there, politicians are making speeches about victory and honour and the war being over by Christmas. They've been saying that since 1914. It's not over. It won't be over. Not soon, anyway. For now, there's just this. The trench. The mud. The men beside you who've become closer than brothers. The food that keeps you alive but barely. The small rituals that give structure to the chaos. A cup of tea, a letter from home, a joke that isn't funny but you laugh anyway because laughing is better than the alternative, the rum ration. Billy passes you the little cap. It's your turn. You drink it down in one swallow. Feel the warmth spread through your chest. Tomorrow will be the same as today, and the day after, and the day after that. But for now, just for this moment, things are almost bearable. That's something. That's got to be something. The screaming starts around midnight, not from the German lines, not from no man's land, from somewhere in your own trench. A raw animal sound that doesn't seem like it could come from a human throat. High-pitched and endless, rising and falling in waves of pure terror. You're awake instantly, reaching for your rifle, heart hammering. But there's no attack, no shells falling, no gas alarm. Just that screaming going on and on, echoing off the trench walls. Corporal Brennan pushes past you, moving toward the sound. You follow, because what else are you going to do? The trench is narrow and dark and the screaming is getting louder. You find him in one of the dugouts, a private named Collins. You don't know him well. He's from another section, arrived maybe a month ago. Young, quiet, kept to himself mostly. He's not quiet now. Collins is pressed into the corner of the dugout, knees drawn up to his chest, arms wrapped around his head. His eyes are open, but they're not seeing anything in this trench. They're seeing something else, something from before, something that broke him. And he's screaming, still screaming like he'll never stop. Brennan crouches down, tries to get through to him, says his name, then louder, then practically shouts it. Nothing. Collins doesn't respond, just keeps making that sound, that horrible keening sound that's somewhere between a scream and a sob. Two men have to hold him down while the stretcher bearers strap him to a board. He fights them the whole way. Not because he's violent, not really. Because he doesn't know where he is anymore. Doesn't know who anyone is. He's trapped in some moment from the past, living through something terrible over and over again, and nothing in the present can reach him. They carry him away. The screaming fades as they move down the communication trench toward the rear. Eventually silence returns, but not the same silence as before. This one is heavier, more fragile. Nobody says anything for a long time. Shell shock, that's what they call it. The doctors came up with the term a year into the war, when it became clear that something was happening to men's minds that couldn't be explained by wounds you could see. At first, people thought it was caused by the actual shock waves from artillery shells, the pressure of explosions rattling the brain inside the skull, a physical injury that just happened to look like madness. But then men started showing up with the same symptoms who'd never been near a shell blast, men who'd simply seen too much, watched too many friends die, spent too many nights in the darkness waiting for death. Their bodies were fine, their minds were shattered. The symptoms are different for everyone. Some men shake, constant trembling that they can't control, hands and arms and whole bodies vibrating like they're standing on a railway platform as a train passes. One sergeant in the next battalion over shakes so badly he can't hold a cup of tea anymore, can't write letters home, can't do anything that requires steady hands. He's been out here 3 years, survived the Somme, and now he trembles like a leaf every minute of every day. Some men go blind. Nothing wrong with their eyes. Doctors check them, shine lights, run tests. The eyes work fine, but the men can't see. Something in their brain has decided that it's had enough of seeing, and it's shut the whole system down. Better darkness than one more glimpse of the things that live out here in no man's land. You heard about a corporal in the next battalion, survived a direct hit on his dugout. Everyone else killed instantly. He was buried under the rubble for 6 hours before they dug him out. When they pulled him free, he could hear fine, could talk fine, could walk and move and function. But he was completely blind. The doctors ran every test they knew. His eyes were perfect. But his brain had decided that it had seen enough, and it wasn't going to show him anything else ever again. Some men go deaf the same way, or mute. They wake up one morning and their voice is gone. Not the throat, not the vocal cords, just the ability to speak. Words get stuck somewhere between the brain and the mouth, and nothing comes out but silence. The mutes are the strangest to be around. You can see them thinking, see their lips move sometimes, forming words that never come. See the frustration in their eyes when they try to communicate and nothing happens. Some of them write things down, little notes on scraps of paper. Others just stop trying, retreat into themselves, let the silence become permanent. Some men have nightmares so bad they can't sleep at all. Close their eyes for 5 minutes and they're back in the worst moment of their lives. A shell landing on their position, a friend bleeding out in their arms, the gas cloud rolling toward them, so they stay awake, days at a time, weeks, until their bodies force them under, and then the nightmares come anyway, and they wake up screaming like Collins. There are men who cry and can't stop, men who laugh at nothing and everything, men who flinch at every sound, even the ones that should be harmless. A pot clanging against another pot, a door slamming shut, a bird startled into flight. These little noises that wouldn't even register back home now send them diving for cover, hands over their heads, waiting for the explosion that isn't coming. The doctors have a term for that look, the one you see in the eyes of men who've been out here too long. They call it the 1,000-yard stare. Eyes that are open but not looking at anything in the present. Eyes that are focused on something far away. Something that isn't really there anymore, except in the mind of the man who can't stop seeing it. 80,000 British soldiers will be diagnosed with shell shock during this war. 80,000 men whose minds broke under the weight of what they were asked to endure. And those are just the ones who got diagnosed. Plenty more suffer in silence, hiding their symptoms, terrified of being seen as weak or crazy or useless. The doctors don't really know what to do with them. Some get sent to convalescent homes, nice places supposedly, in the countryside, where they can rest and recover away from the noise and the fear. Some of them get better, learn to sleep again, to speak again, to look at the world without flinching at every sudden sound. Some of them don't. They stay broken. They'll stay broken for the rest of their lives, and some get treatment that makes the trenches look gentle. There's a doctor named Yelland who treats mute soldiers by applying electric shocks to their throats, jolts of electricity to force the voice back out. When that doesn't work, he uses lit cigarettes, touches the burning end to their tongues and the inside of their mouths to make speaking less painful than staying silent. One patient of his received shocks for 9 months straight, had hot plates placed at the back of his mouth, had lit cigarettes applied to the tip of his tongue, all because he couldn't speak, and the doctors were convinced the only cure was pain. It's barbaric, it's medieval, and it's standard medical practice in this war, because nobody understands what shell shock actually is or how to fix it. The mind is a mystery. Trauma is a mystery. And when you're faced with something you don't understand, you reach for the tools you know. In this case, the tools are electricity and fire. But the worst thing isn't the treatment. The worst thing is what happens to the men who can't take it anymore, who break so completely that they run, who desert their posts or refuse to go over the top, or simply can't make their bodies move when the whistle blows. They get executed. 266 British soldiers will be shot by firing squad during this war for desertion, 18 more for cowardice, 7 for quitting their post without authority, 5 for disobedience, 2 for throwing away their weapons. Think about that for a moment. Men whose minds were destroyed by experiences that would break anyone. Men shaking so badly they couldn't hold a rifle. Men who went blind from terror or mute from trauma, or simply couldn't move because every cell in their body was screaming at them to stop, to hide, to get away from the killing. And instead of help, they got a court-martial, a quick trial, a blindfold, a post to stand against, and a volley of bullets from their own side. Nobody knew how to handle it. That's the thing. The doctors didn't understand it. The officers didn't understand it. The politicians back home certainly didn't understand it. They'd all been raised on stories of glorious warfare, of brave men charging into battle with songs on their lips. The idea that war could break a man's mind as surely as a shell could break his body, that just didn't fit the narrative. So they called it cowardice. They called it weakness. They called it a failure of character, a lack of moral fibre, a deficiency of the British spirit. They took broken men and they broke them further. They took scared boys and they killed them for being scared. Private Harry Farr was one of them. Fought on the Western Front from the beginning. Survived 2 years of this hell. Got shell shock so bad he could barely function. Shaking. Nightmares. The whole package. He was sent back to the line anyway. And when he couldn't make himself go over the top during an assault, when his body simply refused to move forward into the machine guns, they arrested him. Tried him for cowardice. Shot him the next morning. He was 25 years old. His widow received a letter telling her he died of wounds. They didn't mention that the wounds were from a British firing squad. That didn't come out until decades later, when records were unsealed and the truth finally crept into the light. The firing squads are made up of other soldiers, men from different units usually, strangers to the condemned man, but still soldiers, still men who've been through the same things, seen the same horrors. They line up, take aim, and on command they shoot one of their own. Afterward the body is buried quickly, quietly, no military honours, no flag on the coffin. The family gets a telegram full of lies. Died in action, died of wounds, died serving his country. Never the truth, never the shameful secret that their son or husband or father was executed by his own army for the crime of being too damaged to fight anymore. Some of the firing squad members are given blank rounds. They don't know who has live ammunition and who doesn't. It's supposed to help them sleep at night. Give them a way to believe that maybe they weren't one of the ones who actually killed the man. A small mercy in a system designed to be merciless. There's a man in the next section who was on a firing squad once. He doesn't talk about it. Nobody asks, but you can see it on him sometimes, in the way he stares at nothing, in the way he flinches when someone mentions deserters or cowards or executions. He killed one of his own. He'll carry that forever. Another invisible wound, another thing that will never heal. By 1921, 3 years after the war ends, 65,000 British veterans will be receiving government pensions for psychological disorders. 65,000 men still broken, still shaking, still waking up screaming in the night. And those are just the ones the government acknowledged. The real number is probably much higher. You think about Collins, strapped to that stretcher, carried off into the darkness. You wonder what will happen to him. Will he get a convalescent home and kind doctors? Will he get electricity and burning cigarettes? Will he recover enough to be sent back to the line only to break again? Will he refuse an order someday and face a firing squad? You don't know. You probably never will. Morning comes slowly after a night like that. The darkness seems to hang on longer than usual. The cold cuts deeper. The fear that's always there, that constant background hum of terror, feels sharper, more immediate. You check on Billy. He's awake, sitting against the trench wall, staring at nothing. Those same eyes that watched the gas kill that kid a few days ago. That same blank expression that you've seen on too many faces out here. "You all right?" you ask. He doesn't answer right away, just keeps staring. Then, eventually, "Did you hear him? Collins?" "Yeah." "Is that what happens? Eventually?" You don't have a good answer for that. Because the truth is, you don't know. You don't know what separates the men who break from the men who don't. Is it luck? Genetics? Some secret inner strength that some people have and others don't? Or is it just time? Is everyone breakable, given enough days in this hell? Are you just one bad night away from being Collins yourself, screaming in a dugout while strangers hold you down? "I don't know," you say finally. "I don't think anyone does." Old George joins you, moving slow and stiff the way he always does in the mornings. His joints are giving out. Too many nights in the cold and wet. Too many days carrying equipment through the mud. His body is failing him one piece at a time, but his mind is still there, still sharp, still somehow holding together after everything he's seen. "Collins was a good lad," he says quietly. Quiet, kept his head down, did his job. "Yeah." Sometimes it's the quiet ones who go first, the ones who keep everything inside. It builds up, you know, pressure with nowhere to go. And then one day, he doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't need to. The rum ration comes around and you drink yours in one swallow. It doesn't help as much as usual. The warmth spreads through your chest, but the cold in your mind stays put. That's the thing about shell shock. It's not something you can fix with alcohol or rest or willpower. It's not a weakness you can train yourself out of. It's a wound. An invisible wound that doesn't bleed but hurts just as much as any bullet. You wonder if you're already wounded, if the damage is already done, just waiting to show itself. Every man out here carries trauma. Every man has seen things that will haunt him forever. The only question is whether those ghosts will stay manageable, or whether someday they'll take over completely. The sun rises. Another day begins. Stand to. Breakfast. The routines that keep you moving forward even when every part of you wants to stop. Collins is gone. His spot in the line will be filled by someone else. Another face. Another name. Another mind to be chewed up by this war and spat out the other side. You put one foot in front of the other. That's all you can do. One foot, then another, and another, until something stops you. The morning light catches the frost on the sandbags, makes them glitter like they're covered in diamonds. Beautiful almost, if you squint. If you try hard enough to see beauty in a place designed for death. You don't squint. You don't try. You just stand there, rifle in hand, watching the light change, waiting for whatever comes next. That's the secret, you think. The secret to surviving out here without losing your mind. Don't think too far ahead. Don't remember too much of what came before. Just exist in this moment, this breath, this heartbeat, one foot in front of the other, until you can't anymore. The darkness has a weight to it. That's something you didn't expect before you came here. How heavy night can feel when there are no streetlights, no house windows glowing, no moon, just black. Solid, impenetrable black that presses against your eyes like a physical thing. And in that darkness, the trenches come alive. During the day, movement is death. Any head above the parapet draws a sniper bullet. Any gathering of men draws artillery. So you sit, you wait, you try to make yourself invisible. But at night, in the black, you can actually do things, and there's always things to do. Corporal Brennan appears with a work list. Your name is on it. Of course it is. Your name is always on it. Tonight's task, sandbag duty. Sounds almost peaceful when you say it that way. Sandbag duty. Like you're helping out at a flood in some quiet English village. Just filling bags with sand, stacking them up, keeping the water out. Simple work, honest work. Except the sandbags are keeping out bullets and shrapnel, not water. And the sand is mixed with mud and blood and God knows what else. And the whole time you're filling and carrying and stacking, part of your brain is listening for the whistle of incoming shells, the crack of rifle fire, any sound that means you're about to die. You work in the darkness, feeling your way. Can't use lights. Lights draw fire. So you fill each bag by touch, tie it off by feel, pass it along the line to men you can barely see. The mud squelches under your boots. The cold seeps into your fingers. Hours pass, or maybe minutes. Time stops working normally in the dark. Murphy is working beside you. You can hear his breathing, the scrape of his shovel, the grunt as he lifts each filled bag. Neither of you talks. Sound carries at night. The Germans might be listening just like you listen when you're on sentry duty. Any noise could give away your position, but sandbag filling is the easy work. The work nobody minds too much. It keeps you inside the trench, relatively safe, relatively hidden. There's worse duty to draw. Wire repair. That's the one everyone dreads. When the work list says wire duty, men go pale. Some pray, some swear, some just go quiet, the way Billy goes quiet before a gas attack. Because wire duty means going out there, into no man's land. Old George drew wire duty last week. You watched him climb over the parapet and disappear into the darkness. He was gone for 3 hours. When he came back, his uniform was torn in a dozen places, his hands were bleeding from the barbs, and he didn't speak for the rest of the night. Just sat there, shaken slightly, staring at nothing. Later, when the shaking stopped, he told you what happened. How he crawled through the mud for what felt like hours. How a flare went up when he was halfway to the wire, and he pressed himself into a shell crater, face down in water that smelled like death, while the light blazed overhead and machine guns stuttered in the distance. How he lay there for what felt like an eternity, not breathing, not moving, waiting for the bullet that would end him. The bullet didn't come. The flare burned out. The darkness returned, and he continued crawling, metre by agonizing metre, toward the wire that needed fixing. The wire in front of the trenches is thick, belts of it, 10 rows deep in some places, tangled coils that catch feet and hands and bodies. During the day you can see it stretching across no man's land, rusted and glinting in the sun, draped with scraps of cloth and sometimes worse things. At night it's invisible, just there, waiting to snare you. When shells damage the wire, someone has to go out and fix it, carry new coils of barbed wire into the darkness, untangle the broken sections, string new lines. All of this done by feel, in absolute silence, while the enemy is just a few hundred yards away, listening, waiting. Any noise draws fire, a kicked rock, a snapped branch, the clang of wire against metal, and once the shooting starts, the flares go up. Star shells, they call them. Rockets that burst overhead and hang there on little parachutes, blazing bright as day for a minute or more. If you're caught in no man's land when a flare goes up, you freeze. Drop flat against the ground. Press your face into the mud and pray that whatever patch of shell crater or depression you found is deep enough to hide you from the machine gunners. The light is blinding after hours in the dark. Your eyes burn, your heart stops, and you lie there, perfectly still, while the flare drifts slowly down, casting crazy shadows across the tortured landscape, waiting for the bullets to find you. Sometimes they do. Sometimes men go out to fix the wire and they don't come back. You find their bodies in the morning tangled in the very wire they were trying to repair, sometimes still alive, calling out for help that can't come until darkness falls again. But there's work worse than wire repair. Harder, more dangerous, more terrifying. Trench raids. The corporal calls for volunteers sometimes. Other times names just appear on the list. Either way, when you're picked for a raid, something cold settles in your stomach and doesn't leave until you're back in your own trench. If you come back at all. The preparation starts in a dugout in the reserve line. You strip off anything that might make noise, buttons that could clatter, equipment that could rattle, dog tags that might clink together. Everything goes. You travel light, you travel silent. Then comes the cork. Someone produces a tin of burnt cork and you smear it across your face and hands, black on black, making yourself invisible in the darkness. The cork is greasy and smells like campfires. By the time you're done, you look like a creature from a nightmare. 20, 30 men with blackened faces, eyes gleaming white in the candlelight, ready to kill. The weapons for a raid are not the usual ones. Rifles are too long for the close quarters of a trench, too noisy, too slow to reload. Instead, you carry things designed for close, silent work. Trench clubs, heavy wooden batons, sometimes with nails driven through the end, medieval weapons for a modern war, knuckle dusters, brass or steel fitted over the fist, turning every punch into a bone-breaking blow, hatchets, small and sharp, worn in the belt, ready to swing, sheath knives, long blades that can slip between ribs without a sound, entrenching tools, the short-handled spades that every soldier carries. Sharpened to an edge, they become axes, and grenades, Mills bombs they call them, small and round, designed to be thrown into dugouts. Pull the pin, count to 3, throw, duck. The explosion in a confined space is devastating. You carry these things into the darkness, climb over the parapet, and begin the long, slow crawl toward the enemy line. The ground in no man's land is a nightmare. Craters and bodies and wire and mud. You can't see any of it. You feel it under your hands and knees as you crawl. Cold mud that sucks at your clothes. Broken equipment, rifle stocks and canteens and things you don't want to identify. Sometimes something soft that was once a person. You try not to think about what your hands are touching. You try not to notice the smell. The smell is the worst part. Decay and cordite and that particular sour stench of old blood. Men have died out here. Hundreds of them. Thousands. And their bodies lie where they fell because nobody can retrieve them in daylight. So they rot. Slowly. And the smell seeps into everything. Into the mud you're crawling through. Into your uniform. Into your memory. Every sound seems amplified in the dark. Your own breathing is deafening. Your heart pounding in your chest, surely loud enough for the whole German army to hear. A rat scuttling past makes you freeze, hand going to your knife, ready to fight or die. The rustle of grass in the breeze sounds like footsteps, a distant cough from the enemy trenches freezes your blood. You inch forward, metre by metre, minute by minute. Time stretches and compresses. A minute feels like an hour. An hour passes in what seems like seconds. Your knees are torn from crawling. Your elbows are raw. The ground seems to go on forever. The German trench is out there somewhere. You can hear them sometimes. The murmur of voices, a cough, the clink of mess tins, normal sounds, human sounds, from men you're about to kill. The objective might be a prisoner, someone to drag back for interrogation, or it might be a section of trench to clear, grenades thrown into every dugout, clubs swinging at anyone who emerges, or it might be documents, papers and maps taken from dead officers, intelligence that might save lives on your side. Whatever the mission, the execution is always brutal. You reach the enemy wire. Someone produces cutters and begins snipping through strand by strand. The wire twangs softly as it parts. You pray the sentries don't hear. Through the wire into the enemy trench, and then the killing begins. A sentry, half asleep at his post. Someone grabs him from behind, hand over mouth, knife across throat. He goes down without a sound. The warmth of his blood on your hands, the weight of his body going limp. You lower him to the ground and move on. Others might not be so quiet. A dugout entrance. Someone tosses a grenade in. The explosion, muffled but still deafening in the confined space, screams from inside, then silence. On to the next. Shouts of alarm now. The Germans know you're here. Men spilling out of dugouts half-dressed, reaching for weapons. The chaos of close combat in the dark. It's nothing like the battles you imagined before you came here. No glory, no honour. Just men trying to kill each other in the dark, swinging clubs and knives, fighting with the desperation of animals. Blood everywhere, screaming. The sound of metal on bone, the grunt of a man taking a blow, the thud of a body hitting the ground. Someone comes at you and you swing the club. You don't aim, don't think, just swing. The impact travels up your arm. The man falls. You move on. There's no time to think about what you've done, no time to feel, just movement and violence and the desperate need to survive. You don't remember the details afterward. That's what veterans tell you. The mind protects itself. The memories become fragments, a face looming out of the darkness, the weight of the club in your hand, the sound someone makes when they die, someone falling, someone running, and then you're crawling back across no man's land, mission complete or abandoned, just trying to reach your own lines alive. The return is almost worse than the raid itself. Your own sentries are nervous, jumpy. They've heard the commotion from the German side. They know something is happening out in the darkness, and when they see movement coming toward them, their instinct is to shoot. Passwords help. Prearranged. Words that identify you as friendly. But in the chaos of a raid aftermath, with flares going up and bullets flying, mistakes happen. Men have been killed by their own side, shot down yards from safety because a frightened sentry fired before asking questions. You reach the parapet. Hands reach down to pull you up, over the sandbags, into the trench, into relative safety. And you stand there, breathing hard, black cork smeared across your face, blood on your hands that might be yours or might be someone else's. Alive, still alive. The rum ration comes around after raids, extra portions. The army's way of saying thank you, or maybe just trying to quiet the shaking in men's hands. You drink yours down, and it doesn't help much. Nothing helps much after a night like that. Murphy was on the raid with you. He's sitting against the trench wall staring at his hands. There's blood on them. He keeps turning them over, looking at the palms, then the backs, like he's never seen hands before, like he's trying to figure out what they've become. Billy wasn't on this raid, thank God. His feet are still in bad shape from the trench foot. Can barely walk some days, let alone crawl across no man's land. But he's awake, waiting. He sees your face when you come back and his expression changes. Something like fear, something like recognition. He knows, looking at you, what happened out there. He knows because he's been on raids before. He knows what it costs. Okay, he asks quietly. You don't answer. What would you say? Nobody talks about what happens on raids. Not really. Not the details. You might mention that you went out, that you came back, that the mission succeeded or failed. But the actual fighting, the killing, the faces of the men you killed, those things stay locked up inside. Private, shameful, necessary. You wonder sometimes if the Germans feel the same way, if their raiders come back to their trenches and sit in silence, staring at bloody hands, trying not to remember what they did in the darkness. Probably they do. Probably we're all the same in that way, all broken in the same places, all carrying the same weight. Dawn is coming. You can feel it before you see it. The darkness thinning slightly, the stars fading. Another night survived, another day beginning. Your body aches from the crawling. Your hands are cut from the wire. Your mind is full of images you'll never be able to unsee. But you're alive, still alive. Old George finds you as the light grows. He looks at your face, still streaked with cork, and doesn't say anything. Just hands you a mess tin of tea, strong and sweet. You drink it in silence. Bad one? He asks finally. Yeah. They're all bad. He's right. There's no such thing as a good raid. Just raids you survive and raids you don't. Just nights you make it back and nights you don't. Just another form of hell in a war that seems designed to create new forms of hell. The sun rises, the trenches grow lighter. Stand to is called. The routine continues. But somewhere in no man's land, the bodies of the night's work are still lying where they fell. German soldiers killed in a raid they never saw coming. British soldiers killed trying to fix wire or capture prisoners, or complete some mission that probably won't change anything in the end. The war doesn't care. The war just keeps grinding forward, raid after raid, night after night, death after death. You lean against the trench wall and let the morning light wash over you. Close your eyes. Try not to think about tonight, when the darkness will come again and the work will start all over. 3 hours of sleep if you're lucky. Then the whole thing begins again. Old George tells you the story on a quiet evening. The guns have been silent for hours. Not completely silent. You can still hear the distant rumble of artillery somewhere far down the line. But your sector is peaceful tonight. No flares going up. No machine gun bursts. Just the soft sound of men talking in low voices, the occasional clink of mess tins, the drip of water somewhere in the trench. George is sitting against the sandbag wall, his pipe glowing orange in the darkness. He doesn't smoke much these days. Tobacco's hard to come by. But tonight he found half a pouch in his kit and decided to treat himself. You know what tonight is? He asks. You think about it. The days blur together out here. You've lost track of dates, weeks, months. Time is measured in rotations now. 4 days front, 4 days support, 8 days reserve. Not in calendar squares. Can't say I do. December 23rd. Day after tomorrow is Christmas. Christmas. The word sounds strange out here, like something from another world. A word that belongs to warm houses and decorated trees and children opening presents, not to mud and wire and the smell of death. Doesn't feel much like Christmas, you say. George puffs on his pipe. The smoke drifts up and disappears into the night sky. Let me tell you about Christmas 1914, he says. My first winter in the trenches, the first Christmas of the war. You settle back against the wall. George's stories are always worth hearing. He's been here longer than anyone, seen things most men can't imagine, and unlike some of the others, he actually talks about it sometimes, in his own way, in his own time. We'd been fighting for months by then, since August. The first battles were chaos. Nobody knew what they were doing. We thought it would all be over by Christmas. That's what they told us. Home by the holidays. Instead, we were digging trenches, trying to stay alive, watching friends die every day. He pauses, draws on the pipe. By December, we were exhausted, both sides. The big pushes had failed. The lines weren't moving. We were just sitting there a few hundred yards apart, killing each other for no reason anyone could explain. And then Christmas Eve came. His voice changes when he talks about it. Softer, almost, wondering. Like he still can't quite believe what happened. It started with singing. We could hear them, the Germans, singing carols in their trenches. Silent Night, O Tannenbaum. Songs we knew, even if the words were different. Beautiful voices drifting across no man's land on a cold, clear night. You try to picture it. German soldiers singing Christmas carols. The enemy, the men you're supposed to hate. Just voices in the darkness, singing about peace and hope. Some of our lads started singing back, "O come all ye faithful." We started it in English, and halfway through we realized Germans were singing along. Same tune, Latin words, Adeste Fideles. Both sides singing the same song in the middle of a war. He shakes his head slowly. The pipe has gone out, but he doesn't notice. Then someone shouted, a German voice calling out in English, "You know shoot, we know shoot." We didn't know what to make of it. Could have been a trick. But something felt different that night. The air itself felt different. Billy has joined you now, sitting close, listening. Murphy too. Even Corporal Brennan, standing a few feet away, has stopped pretending he's not paying attention. Christmas morning I poke my head over the parapet. Just a quick look, ready to duck back down, and I saw them. German soldiers standing on top of their trench, not shooting, just standing there, waving. He pauses to let that sink in. The impossibility of it. Men standing in the open, in daylight, on a battlefield. Men who should be dead the moment they showed their heads. The morning was beautiful, cold and clear, frost on the ground, white, almost everywhere. Like a proper English Christmas if you squinted and ignored the shell holes. The sun was just coming up, everything glittering with ice, and there they were, Fritz, Tommy, all standing up like the war had been called off. "What did you do?" Billy asks. His voice is quiet, almost reverent. Someone in our trench stood up too, then another, then me. My legs were shaking, I won't lie. Every instinct screaming that this was wrong, that I was about to catch a bullet. But I climbed out anyway, started walking, and they were walking toward us, meeting in the middle, in that terrible ground where so many men had died. He stops, swallows hard. Even after all these years, the memory still catches him. The first German I met was about my age, had a moustache like mine. He stuck out his hand and said, "Merry Christmas" English in pretty good English. His name was, I want to say Heinrich, or Hans, something like that. We shook hands. His grip was firm, warm, real, and I thought, this is the enemy? This is the monster I'm supposed to hate. George's eyes are distant now, seeing something from years ago, something impossible. They were just like us, young lads mostly, tired, scared, missing home. Some of them spoke English, really good English. Turns out a lot of Germans had worked in England before the war, waiters and barbers and such. They knew our language, knew our culture, and now they were supposed to be our enemies. "What happened when you met?" Murphy asks. "We shook hands. Can you imagine? 24 hours earlier, we were trying to kill each other. Now we're shaking hands and saying Merry Christmas, trading things, cigarettes for sausages, buttons for badges, little souvenirs. One German gave me a cigar. I gave him a tin of bully beef. He made a face when he tasted it. Even they knew our food was terrible." A small laugh ripples through the listeners. The universal hatred of bully beef, crossing all national boundaries. We showed each other photographs, wives and children and sweethearts back home. They had families too, people who loved them, people waiting for them to come back, just like us, just like everyone. George's voice catches for a moment. He clears his throat, continues. "One young German, couldn't have been more than 19, showed me a picture of his girl, pretty thing with dark hair. He kept saying her name, Greta, Greta, like a prayer, like if he said it enough times, he'd make it back to her. I showed him a picture of my Sarah. He nodded, smiled. Schön, he said. Beautiful. We understood each other perfectly, even without many words. He shifts against the sandbag wall, settling deeper into the memory. We buried the dead that day too, both sides. Men who'd been lying in no man's land for weeks, months, some of them. Couldn't retrieve them before, you see. Anyone who tried got shot. But that Christmas, we worked together. British and Germans digging graves side by side, saying prayers over bodies that had been left to rot. It wasn't pretty. The smell was, well, you can imagine, but it felt right, felt human, giving us lads a proper burial at last. Someone produced a football. God knows where it came from. Maybe tied together from rags or an empty jam tin wrapped in cloth. Some say it was a real ball someone had brought from home. Didn't matter. We played. Right there in no man's land. Germans versus British. The pitch was shell craters and frozen mud. The goals were helmets stuck in the ground. Nobody kept score. Nobody cared. We were just playing like children, like the war had never happened. Murphy leans forward. Who won? George laughs softly. Depends who you ask. The Germans claimed 3-2. We said it was a draw. Truth is, nobody was really counting. We were too busy laughing. Can you imagine that? Laughing. In the middle of a war. In the middle of all that death. Just laughing. Like normal people do. You try to imagine it. A football match in the middle of a battlefield. Men who would try to kill each other tomorrow, kicking a ball back and forth today. It sounds like a dream, like something that couldn't possibly be real. How long did it last, you ask? That day. The next day too in most places. Some units kept the truce going until New Year's, but eventually it had to end. Orders came down from the generals, both sides, no more fraternizing. Anyone caught talking to the enemy would be court-martialed. His voice hardened slightly. They were scared, you see. the men in charge, scared that if we stopped hating each other, we might stop fighting. And then what? All their plans, all their strategies, all their dreams of victory, gone. Because the men doing the dying decided they'd rather play football. The night seems darker now, colder. The distant guns are still rumbling. The war is still there, waiting to resume. So it ended? It ended. We went back to our trenches, they went back to theirs, and the next day, or the day after, the shooting started again. Men who had shared cigarettes and photographs were shooting at each other. Men who had played football together were trying to blow each other up. He stares at his cold pipe. I often wonder about the moment it started again. Who fired the first shot? Was it an order from some general who wasn't there? Was it an accident? Or did someone just decide that Christmas was over and war was war? Nobody talks about that part. The going back to killing. The pretending that day never happened. Billy's voice is barely a whisper. Did it ever happen again? The truce. Not like that. Not on that scale. The next year, 1915, some units tried. Arranged little ceasefires to collect bodies, retrieve the wounded. But the generals had learned their lesson. They came down hard on anyone who tried to make peace, threatened court-martials, threatened worse. By 1916, after the Somme, after all these deaths, there was too much hate, too much grief. The war had gone too far to stop for Christmas. George is quiet for a long moment. When he speaks again, his voice is rougher. I knew a man who was there at the Somme. Told me that on Christmas 1916, the Germans put up a sign. Merry Christmas, it said. Some of our lads started to get up, remembering 1914. But the officers stopped them, and then the artillery started. The Germans dropped shells on us all Christmas Day. The war had poisoned everything by then, even the memory of peace. He reaches for his pipe again, realizes it's cold, puts it away. 100,000 men, they say, maybe more, on both sides, all taking part in the truce that first year. 100,000 soldiers who decided just for a day or two that they'd rather be human than enemies. That's not nothing. That's not a small thing. The silence stretches out, each man lost in his own thoughts. You think about the Germans in the trench across no man's land right now. Tonight, this very moment. Are they cold too? Tired too? Missing home too? Of course they are. They're just men. Just boys, some of them. No different from Billy or Murphy or you, doing what they're told, trying to survive, hoping to see their families again. Murphy speaks up, his voice thoughtful. Do you think, if we all just stopped, if everyone just put down their rifles at once, could they make us keep fighting? George shakes his head slowly. That's the thing, isn't it? They need us more than we need them. All those generals and politicians, they can't fight a war without soldiers, but they know how to keep us fighting. Threaten families back home. Tell us the other side won't stop. Make sure we're more afraid of our own officers than the enemy. It's all a big machine, and once it starts, it's hard to stop. He looks at Murphy with something like sadness. A British soldier who was there, a man named Wood, said something I never forgot. He said, if we had been left to ourselves, there would never have been another shot fired. I believe that. I truly do. But we're never left to ourselves. That's the tragedy of it. And tomorrow, if the orders come, you'll try to kill them. And they'll try to kill you. Because that's what war is. That's what this whole bloody mess has become. Why did you tell us that story? You ask George finally. He looks at you with eyes that have seen too much, survived too much. Because it's almost Christmas, and because you should know that it happened, that for one brief moment, in the middle of all this madness, ordinary men chose peace, chose each other, chose to remember that the people on the other side are people too. He pushes himself up from the wall, his joints creak, his body protests. He's 32 years old and moves like a man of 60. The war ages everyone. Get some sleep, lads. Tomorrow's another day, and the day after that is Christmas Eve. Won't be any truce this year. Not allowed anymore, but you can still remember. You can still know that it happened once, that it's possible, that even in a place like this, humanity can find a way through. He moves off down the trench, disappearing into the darkness. You watch him go. This man who shook hands with the enemy, who played football in no man's land, who saw what peace looks like and then had to go back to war. You sit there for a while longer, Billy beside you, Murphy a few feet away, the night pressing in around you. Billy breaks the silence first. I can't stop thinking about it. The football match. Out there. He nods toward the darkness beyond the trench. In no man's land. Where we send the raids. Where the bodies are. I know. It's the same ground. The same mud. Just different. Because people decided it could be different. Murphy stirs. My dad used to say that war is a choice. Rich men's choice. Poor men's fight. I never really understood what he meant until now. Where's your dad now? Billy asks. Dead. Gallipoli. Never even got a proper grave. Nobody knows what to say to that. What can you say? Sorry doesn't cover it. Nothing covers it. The distant guns have fallen silent now. Even they seem tired tonight. Even the war needs to rest sometimes. Somewhere, very faintly, you think you hear singing. A German carol drifting across no man's land. Stille Nacht. Silent night. But maybe it's just your imagination. Maybe it's just the wind. Maybe it's just the memory of a story echoing in your mind. Or maybe, just maybe, there's a German soldier over there, remembering the same story, humming the same tune, thinking the same thoughts about the enemy who isn't really an enemy at all. You close your eyes, let the sound wash over you. Real or imagined, it doesn't matter. For just a moment, just this one quiet moment, the war seems very far away. Billy's breathing has slowed beside you. He's falling asleep, head tipped back against the sandbags. Murphy has gone quiet too. Even Brennan, somewhere down the trench, has stopped his pacing. Peace. Just for a moment. Just for tonight. You hold on to it as long as you can. Morning comes slowly. The grey light creeps over the horizon, turning the darkness into shapes. The parapet, the sandbags, the trench walls that have become your whole world. Another dawn, another day, another chance to live or die. But today is different. Today, you're leaving. The rotation has finally come around. 4 days in the front line, and now it's time to move back. Support trenches first, then reserve. 8 whole days away from the worst of it. 8 days where the shells might not find you, where the snipers can't reach, where you might actually get some sleep. Corporal Brennan passes the word down the line. Pack up. Get ready. The relief unit is coming. You gather your things. There isn't much. Your rifle, your kit. A few letters from home, creased and soft from being read too many times. The photograph of your family that you keep in your breast pocket, close to your heart. Everything else you own is mud and memories. Billy's already packed. He's practically vibrating with nervous energy. The first real enthusiasm you've seen from him in days. His feet are still in bad shape, wrapped in strips torn from an old shirt, but he doesn't seem to care. He's getting out. That's all that matters. How long until we can have a proper bath, he asks. Couple days probably, once we're in reserve. A bath. He says the word like it's sacred, like it's something from a dream. With hot water and soap. Murphy laughs quietly. Listen to him. Hot water. Next he'll be wanting clean sheets and a feather pillow. I'd kill for a feather pillow, Billy admits. I'd actually commit murder. Careful what you say. They might take you up on that. The humour is gentle now. Tired. The jokes don't have the edge they used to. Everyone's too worn down for anything sharp. Old George appears, his kit already slung over his shoulder. He looks older than he did 4 days ago. The front line ages everyone. Days become years in this place. Ready to move out? More than ready. Good. Stay alert on the way back. Communication trenches aren't as safe as people think. Keep your heads down until we're clear. Always the warning, always the reminder. Even when you're leaving, the danger doesn't really leave. It just changes shape. The relief unit arrives around mid-morning. Fresh faces. Relatively fresh anyway. Men from a unit that's been in reserve, rested and fed and almost healthy looking. They file past you in the narrow trench, moving toward the front while you move toward the back. Nobody talks much, just nods of acknowledgement. The understanding of men who know what's coming for the newcomers and what's ending for you. One of them catches your eye. Young, very young. Probably lied about his age to enlist, same as Billy did. He looks at you like you're some kind of veteran, some grizzled survivor, and you realize that to him, you are. 4 days at the front and you've become one of the old hands, the ones who know things, the ones who've seen things. His uniform is still relatively clean. His equipment is still shiny in places. His eyes still have that look, the one you probably had when you first came up. That mixture of fear and excitement. That belief that it will be an adventure. That naive hope that he'll be one of the lucky ones. You want to tell him something helpful, some piece of wisdom that might keep him alive. But what would you say? Keep your head down. Don't trust the quiet. The rats will eat your rations if you don't hang them up. None of it seems adequate. None of it captures what this place really is. Watch for the smell of gas. Stay with your partner during foot inspections. Don't volunteer for wire duty if you can help it. Find an older soldier and do what he does. Write letters home while you can. Don't make friends, or do make friends, or something in between because nobody knows the right answer. Don't think about tomorrow. Don't remember yesterday. Just be here, now, alive, for as long as that lasts. So you just nod. He nods back, and you keep walking, leaving him to discover all of this for himself, the way everyone does, the way you did, the way the war teaches everyone one horror at a time. The communication trench twists and turns, leading back from the front lines. It's safer here, but not safe. Shells can still find you. Snipers sometimes get lucky angles. You stay low, move steady, don't bunch up. The habits of survival, learned through days of constant fear. After what feels like hours, but is probably less than one, the trenches open up. The ground rises slightly. The air smells different. Not clean, exactly. Nothing out here is clean, but cleaner. Less like death. More like just mud and smoke and the ordinary filth of army life. The support trenches are better. Slightly wider, slightly deeper. The dugouts are more substantial, some with actual wooden supports and bunks. not comfortable by any normal standard, but after the front line they feel almost luxurious. You find a spot, drop your kit, sit down. And for the first time in 4 days you feel something loosen in your chest. The constant clench of fear, the permanent tension of waiting for death, it eases. Just a little, just enough to notice. Billy's already asleep, sprawled on a pile of sandbags, snoring softly, dead to the world, his body finally letting go of the vigilance that kept him alive up there. Murphy's writing a letter, his 48th to his sweetheart maybe, or 49th. He keeps them in that oilcloth pouch, each one numbered just in case he doesn't make it and someone needs to send them on. Old George settles beside you with a grunt. "Made it," he says. "Made it." Another rotation done, getting closer to the end. The end, whatever that means. The end of your rotation, the end of the war, the end of your life. All possible, none certain. You've stopped thinking too far ahead. The war doesn't let you. "The words we use out here," George says suddenly. "You ever think about that?" "What do you mean?" "The slang. The way we talk. It's not like how we talked back home. It's something new. Something the trenches made. Mix soldiers from every part of Britain. Add in Australians, Canadians, Indians, French, Americans. Throw in the German words we pick up from prisoners and shouted conversations. It all blends together into something that never existed before. You think about it. He's right. The language of this place is its own thing. Words and phrases that didn't exist before, or didn't mean what they mean now. Like what? Like potato mashers. That's what we call the German grenades, because they look like the thing you mash potatoes with back in your mum's kitchen. The stick coming out the end. Sounds almost friendly, doesn't it? Potato mashers, not like something designed to tear you apart. You've heard the term, used it yourself probably. Never thought about where it came from. How strange that you can take something that kills people and give it a name from home cooking. How strange that it somehow makes it easier to talk about. Or stormtroopers. That's what we call the German soldiers who do the fast attacks. The dangerous ones. The ones trained to break through our lines before we know what's happening. Stormtroopers, like they're forces of nature, like they're weather, not men. Makes them seem less human, I suppose. Makes it easier to shoot at them. Never heard that one. You will. If they come at us, you'll hear it plenty. They're training whole units of them now, the Germans are. Special soldiers just for trench raids. Men who do nothing but practice killing up close. They say they can clear a section of trench in under a minute. That's terrifying. That's war. Always finding new ways to kill. Always finding new words for it. He shifts, getting more comfortable against the trench wall. Then there's cooties. That's what the Americans call the lice. Cooties. From some kind of duck that's always covered in parasites. A coot, I think. Sounds almost friendly when you say it like that. Cooties. Like something from a children's game. Not like the itching, biting little horrors that they actually are. The ones that crawl into every seam of your uniform. The ones that carry trench fever. The ones that make you scratch until you bleed. You scratch unconsciously at your collar. The lice never really go away. Even when you think you've gotten rid of them, they come back. They always come back. Part of the landscape now, like the mud and the rats in the endless grey sky. The worst one, George says quietly, is basket case. What's that? He's silent for a moment. His face has gone still. When he speaks again, his voice is lower. Men who've lost their arms and legs, all of them, so badly wounded they can't walk, can't use their hands, can't do anything for themselves. They carry them out in baskets, long casket-shaped baskets, because stretchers are for men who still have limbs, because there's nothing else left to carry. You feel sick. Try not to show it. Somewhere in the back of your mind you'd known about men like that, heard whispers, but you'd never had a word for it, never had to picture it so clearly. Basket case, George repeats. That's what they call them. Like it's just another word. Like it's not the most horrific thing you can imagine. Like it's just slang, instead of the end of everything a man can be. The language of war. Born in mud and blood. Words that will outlast the trenches, outlast the men who invented them. Someday people will say, basket case, and have no idea where it came from. No idea what it really means. They'll use it for someone who's just a bit stressed, a bit overwhelmed. They'll have no clue. The afternoon passes slowly. You sleep for a while. Real sleep, not the half-conscious doze of the front line. Your body sinks into rest like a stone into water. Deep, dark, dreamless. When you wake, the light has changed. Evening now, someone's made tea. You drink it gratefully, not caring that it's weak and barely warm. It's tea. It's something normal. Something that reminds you of home. Billy's awake too, looking better than he has in days. The colour has returned to his face. His hands have stopped shaking. He's talking with Murphy about football, about the season back home, about which teams are likely to win what. Normal conversation. Ordinary things. This is what the rotation is for. This is why they don't leave you at the front forever. Because the human mind can only take so much. Because without these breaks, everyone would end up like Collins, screaming at midnight, lost in horrors they can't escape. 8 days of this. 8 days of relative safety. 8 days to remember what it feels like to be a person instead of a target. Then back to the front. The cycle continues. Will continue. For how long? Nobody knows. Months more. Years. The war was supposed to be over by Christmas 1914. Now it's Christmas again, and there's no end in sight. Just trenches stretching from the coast to the mountains. Just men killing each other in the mud. Just this strange new life that's replaced your old one. You try to remember what it was like before. Before the war. Before the trenches. Before the constant fear and the mud and the death. There was a life, wasn't there? A home. A family. Streets without shell holes. Nights without gunfire. Days without watching friends die. It feels like a dream now. Like something you made up. Like something that happened to someone else a long time ago. But it was real. And someday, if you survive, if this war ever ends, you'll have to go back to it. Back to normal life. Back to being the person you were before you learned what you've learned. Before you saw what you've seen. Before you did what you've done. You wonder if that's even possible. If any of you can really go back. Or if the trenches have changed you so completely that the old life won't fit anymore. Like clothes that belong to someone else. Like a house you used to live in but no longer recognize. Old George says the ones who make it home carry the trenches with them forever. They look normal on the outside, but inside they're still here. Still waiting for the shells. Still checking for gas. Still waking up at night. Reaching for rifles that aren't there. Maybe that's the real cost of this war. Not just the men who die, but the men who live. The men who have to keep living with what they've seen. The men who will never really leave the trenches, no matter how far away they go. Night falls, the stars come out cold and distant. Somewhere far away the guns are rumbling. Other men, in other trenches, fighting and dying while you rest. Tomorrow or the next day or the day after that, it will be your turn again. But not tonight, not right now. You find a space in a dugout. Pull your coat tight around you. The walls are damp and the smell isn't great, but it's shelter, it's protection. It's the closest thing to safety this world allows. Old George is nearby, Murphy, Billy, your section, your people, broken and tired and scared, but still here, still alive, still together. And somewhere, across no man's land, the Germans are probably doing the same thing, resting in their own dugouts, drinking their own tea, writing their own letters home, just as tired, just as scared, just as human, just as ready for this whole thing to be over, if only someone would let it be over. You close your eyes, let the sounds of the trench fade into background noise, the murmur of voices, the distant guns, the small sounds of men settling in for the night. Tomorrow will come soon enough. Tomorrow with its duties and dangers, tomorrow with its endless routine of survival. The same routine that's been going on for years now. The same routine that might go on for years more. But that's tomorrow. Right now, in this moment, you're safe. You're warm. You're surrounded by men who would die for you and for whom you would die. Men who've shared your bread and your fear and your small moments of laughter. Men who know what you know, who've seen what you've seen, who understand in ways that no one back home ever will. And that's enough. That's all there is. That's the only truth the trenches have taught you. You survive one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, one breath at a time, and somehow, impossibly, you keep going. Your breathing slows, your muscles relax. The weight of the days lifts, just slightly, as sleep begins to pull you under. The exhaustion you've been holding back finally washes over you. Your body, which has been clenched with tension for days, finally lets go. The war will still be there in the morning, the mud and the wire and the death. But that's morning. That's later. That's not now. Now there's only rest, only peace, only the gentle drift toward dreams. And perhaps, if you're lucky, those dreams will carry you far from here, back to green fields and quiet streets, back to the people who love you, back to a world where wars are just stories and soldiers are just names in history books, and no one ever has to learn what it really feels like to live in the mud and pray for one more day. Perhaps, when you wake, the sun will be shining. Perhaps the guns will be silent. Perhaps the war will somehow have ended while you slept, and all of this will be over. Perhaps. But even if not, even if tomorrow brings more of the same, more mud, more fear, more death, at least you had this moment.